got all my boosts. I got my COVID shots. I got my flu shots. Okay. Budget retreat. I've got it.
Oh, do you have meetings that you need to be at that day, and what times? Where in the world did my pen go?
I steal a lot of things.
February 3rd, 2026, and everybody is here and accounted for. So we'll start out with our invocation by Councilmember Smith and then the pledge by Councilmember Campbell.
Our kind Father in heaven, we're thankful this evening for the opportunity we have to meet as citizens of Highland, and we're very thankful for the great staff that we have and the opportunity we have as council and mayor to serve. We're thankful for living in a constitutional republic, and we're thankful for representative government. We're thankful for all those citizens who have come this night, and we look forward to their comments. We ask you to bless us with thy spirit this night, that we may make careful decisions and that we may have civil discourse at all times. These things we pray for in you, Jesus Christ, amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to unscheduled public appearances. So these are a chance for people to give us your comments, and just so everybody is aware, this is not a back and forth, so we'll have you comment, but then if you have questions or whatever, we'll refer you to staff afterwards and get your contact information for them. We have one public hearing tonight, which is the boundary adjustment with Highland City and Draper. So if you're here to speak to that item, you can go ahead and wait until we hear that item. Otherwise, we'll take comments at the beginning. So let's start with the comment cards that I have, and then after that, we'll move on to anybody else who didn't get a chance to fill one out. So first we have Jake Weber, and after that we have Nicholas Hudson. So we'll start there.
Hi, it's always fun to go first. My name is Jake Weber. I'm an Orem resident, but I have family ties here in Highland. I am a representative of the Utah High School Cycling League. I am the venue development director, and today we are here in support of your Highland Bike Park. I represent over 7,500 student athletes and 4,500 coaches. Hundreds of them live in your town of Highland. And so any chance you have to build infrastructure to get kids out on bikes safely, we are fully behind. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for making the trek from Orem. Nicholas Hudson, and after that we have Alexandra.
Hi, so Nick Hudson. I live here in Alpine, actually. So I'm the head coach of the Lone Peak Mountain Bike team. So I wanted to talk also about the mountain bike park. Wanted to tell really quick why I do mountain bike and why I'm a part of the team. So as my oldest daughter was going in 7th grade, she was still kind of looking for a place where she belonged. She didn't have really many friends or anything that she'd really grabbed onto. So we had some neighbors that said, hey, check out this mountain bike team. So we decided to do it. She decided to do it because it sounded fun, sounded interesting. I decided to do it because as part of the team, adults ride with the kids. We require a lot of adult supervision with the groups, which means I as a parent got to spend 4 hours a week riding a bike with my daughter, which was amazing. So fast forward, as you can see, now I'm the head coach of the team. It's been about 9 years. I have 5 kids that either have or do ride with the team. They've all learned to love the outdoors, and we have countless family memories, riding bikes, driving to races, driving to pre-rides. It's really become a central part of our family. So why is that relevant? In Highland, as Jake mentioned, I want to talk the breakdown in terms of the participants on the team. So we have 386 total participants on the team. That includes junior high students, high school students, and adults. That's on the Lone Peak team. There's obviously a Skyridge team that Highland athletes are on as well. But that's 42% of our team. 159 of those Highland participants. That's 42%. Alpine is the next biggest city represented with 24%. Cedar Hills has 10% of the team. So you can see we actually are, by and large, we're a pretty heavily Highland team. So that also breaks down those 160 Highland individuals. We got 50 junior high students, 70 high school students, and 40 adults. So those are all individuals that are learning to enjoy the outdoors, enjoy that active lifestyle, and have those family experiences together. So how does that relate to the park? And why do we want the park? Well, so mountain biking requires skill and endurance, right? Endurance we're pretty good at. We have a lot of trails that do really good at endurance. Skills is a little bit more of a challenge. We do have some good skill trails, but it is a little bit more limited, and we find ourselves going up to Draper, the cycle park, quite often, or out to Eagle Mountain. Those are a bit of a drive, obviously, for Highland residents. So having a local resource like this where we are able to practice on those skills would make a huge difference for us as a team to be able to grow and get better, as well as to the Highland residents that are on our team to learn to love mountain biking, enjoy the experiences together, and just be fit and have fun. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming, and thank you for all you do for those kids. It's a good group of kids you have there, I know, so thank you. We've got Alexandra and then Alan.
Hello. Again, my name is Alexandra Grunwald, and I did speak last month about the urgent need for traffic calming measures and pedestrian safety measures on Canal Boulevard. I do appreciate how busy the city council is. My father did a lot of civil service while I was growing up and understood that he was away a lot and had a lot of things to address, and I understand this may not be top of your list, which I understand. And I wasn't going to come tonight to give time, and I do respect that. I was concerned when I read in the Highland newsletter that discussions on Canal Boulevard are considered complete and the focus is now being shifted to 9600 North. While progress may have been made on the eastern sections, the westernmost portion, the most residential area, still has the fewest traffic calming measures in place despite being the most residential. This stretch has been a topic of concern for years, and many residents feel their voices haven't been heard, leading to a sense of resignation about this and frustration. Lucky for them, and perhaps unlucky for you, my husband Mark Chagany and I moved in with 4 small children and 1 on the way, with a renewed hope that something can be done. My family uses this road daily, whether it's in a car, on foot, bike, or even scooter. My parents also live along Canal Boulevard, which increases our usage. We chose Highland for its open spaces, parks, and walkable neighborhoods, creating the kind of childhood we had that we want for our children. But the speeding and unsafe pedestrian crossings on this section undermines the safety and quality of life. We understand why the road is extended. It's convenient. It also cuts the drive to my parents from 10 minutes to 4, which we love. And it does serve the greater good of the community, even if it was controversial. Now that the road is built, the job is still not done. The responsibility remains to make this final residential stretch safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers alike. That stretch of road is easy to speed on or go into autopilot. It's a relatively straight shot with a minor dip between 6,000 West and 6,800 West. Your own traffic calming manual states, when implementing traffic calming measures, it is important to note that often one single measure will not result in reduced speeds. Combining multiple traffic calming measures creates a cumulative effect on speed reduction. If this is true, then why does our section of the road only have the radar speed signs and other section have multiple measures? Our section is by far the most residential, and with Mitchell Hollow Trail going in, will only become more so. We would like pedestrian safety measures at the two four-way intersections, 6180 West and 6630 West along this stretch, as well as an additional or multiple passive traffic calming measures. I'm asking for concrete steps. What can residents do to help this move forward? Do we need petitions, signatures? What specific measures can we do there? We want to partner with you to find solutions to make it that work for everyone who uses the road and not just those who live there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and never a need to apologize for taking up time or for coming. We appreciate it. Alan, and then Adam, and then Bryce.
Good evening. My name is Alan Lyon, resident of Highland. Over the years, I've heard comments multiple times about the need for senior housing in Highland. I want to just briefly share what that looks like in Highland today. My father-in-law is a resident also of Highland. He lives at Highland Glen. Over the last 4 months, the cost of his living has gone from $3,600 to $4,800. $1,200 price increase, 33%. The cheapest a senior can live in the area, not just Highland, in an independent living facility is going to cost about $53,000 a year. Now, Highland Glen is owned by MK Senior Living. 40 locations in the US, 5 here in Utah. MBK Senior Living is owned by Mitsui & Company in Japan. When we moved my father-in-law in there, they were highlighting the fact that they were Japanese-owned and how much the Japanese care about our aging senior population. The last published net profit of Mitsui & Company was $6 billion. I don't know if we have any other $6 billion companies doing business in Highland. There is nothing affordable about senior living in Highland, especially when they're profiting on a company with $6 billion. So my point is simply this, and ask two things. Pretty much all senior housing in the area and up in Salt Lake is owned now by large corporations, investment firms. There's very few independently owned facilities anymore. They're all owned by large entities. So I'd ask the City Council to consider two things. One, what, if any, city code policies should be enacted now before another senior center might be added in the future that would help control the costs of senior living? And second, I often hear in connection with, say, the Longhorn property, Highland Mains, or the property that the LDS Church is selling just north of Highland Mains, of the possibility of senior housing. But I imagine most of those are going to come with some zoning concessions or zoning changes. And just know that any concessions the city might give is only benefiting large corporations that are not even located typically in Utah or even in the United States. So let's never trade zoning concessions today for what is unaffordable senior housing in any of these facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. That is a difficult time with the parents, I happen to know. Adam, thank you.
Evening. I'm Adam Clark. I'm actually a citizen of Eagle Mountain, and I run the Lake Mountain Trails Association. We cover about 80 square miles of trail, including Saratoga Springs, and work a lot with other cities and in the area to develop trails. We have a huge system out there, and I also run the Flyers Cycling Club, which is now one of the largest nonprofit mountain bike development programs in the country, with over 800 kids in our programs, and including some kids who live here. And so I was asked by some of your caring citizens to come and just make a comment about your Highland Bike Park and some of the things you're doing there. Cities get to choose over time through the decisions they make about what their brand's going to be and what that brand represents and what they give to their cities as a way of living and what kind of memories and things are going to be there. And those choices have profound impacts. When I've gone to trail forums and represented our city at outdoor recreation planning and other things, one of the things we've run into is a lot of cities have this, we're a used to city idea. We used to be able to, we used to have bike trails. We used to have open space. We used to go deer hunting. We used to do, rabbit hunting, whatever. And over time, you get to choose with what's left of your open space, how you're going to use that and what it's going to be. Is it going to be a used to thing, or is it going to be look at what we have thing? Is it going to be something that offers worth and value to your citizens, or is it going to be something that someone made a lot of money on or just sits there and doesn't really actively act towards anything good? When I left my house today, I was driving out, and I have this enduro program, and we built a bike park and some others. We're building trails actively to try and give these enduro kids somewhere they can race and ride. It's a little different than cross-country trails. And I now have a program of 60-plus kids in this enduro program, which is the largest in the country. And these kids are out there building trails and having fun, with permission to build trails. But there were 8 of them out there that have been out there since school got out today, every day the last 3 days, because it's been nice weather. And there's kids from Lehigh and Saratoga and Eagle Mountain. They're all out there together. They're riding, they're building, they're having fun and building relationships. And as someone who had a son who rode semi-pro and went through all the years of biking, and my own daughter who rides now, and watching their progress and the benefit they got from the relationships they built by doing things together that wasn't on a computer, wasn't in a video screen, but was outside doing things together, made a huge impact on all of these kids that are now on missions and in college and doing things successfully. And that's the impact. They used to ride in Eagle Mountain, and that's a used to I'm proud of, but because we still can. And you get to have the choice of what you build. And I would encourage you to take that spirit and implement it.
Thank you, and thanks for making the trek from Eagle Mountain. That's not an easy feat itself, for sure. Yeah. Bryce, that's not us, by the way.
Bryce Wisen is my name. I'm the assistant head coach of the Lone Peak High School mountain bike team, Go Night Riders. I started coaching mountain biking because I love to ride and learned real quickly that I love the kids. I love the other coaches and volunteers that make it happen. My why has changed over the years as I've seen the impact that it's had on kids. And really, if you think about it, it makes sense. We're getting kids outside, pushing them to do hard things, challenging them, helping them take risks, helping them see that they have grown. So all those benefits of mountain biking, I look at the mountain bike park and say, oh, it's just a concentrated form for the mountain bike park. So very supportive of the work that you've done so far on Highland Glen, and really am excited about the changes that are contemplated and encourage you to consider those. I love to ride there. My kid loves to ride there far more than his English teacher, but don't underestimate more than his English teacher would like, I meant. But don't underestimate the positive impact that an asset like this in our community can have on our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your work with the kids. Anybody else who would like to make a public comment? Welcome.
Hello, I'm Pam Redmond. I've been here for many years, and I like to underscore what Alex just said about the hazards of West Canal Boulevard. We've been here many times trying to get some remediation for that road, and I'm sure that some of you who live close to that road can underscore my feelings too, that the striping just isn't enough. I live less than 10 yards from the curb, and I see this stomach churning speeding going on, and I know that children live very close to that road. And then my dear friend Roy Martin's grandchild crosses that road every day to see her grandparents, and I don't know, one day she may not make it. The cross route that she spoke about, nobody stops for it. If you're standing there, everybody is just speeding through. It's dangerous. And when I came here one time earlier, there was money. We've even paid the money for the toolbox, the $25 to have the petition to, please study this. And it ended up that we ended up studying 4 other roads, and they seem to have become the priority. Please look at Canal again. Chris Trusty recommended something I wish and I hope he will consider, and I think he called it temporary traffic circles, which were you were giving us a choice of a couple things that within the budget that might work. Sorping was one, this was another. Please think about putting them at the same place that she mentioned, 6180 West and 6630 West on Canal Boulevard, because what they have now is inadequate. We need our children protected. Please think about doing these two things. It would be appropriate for our section of the road. And I think it's cost effective and it's highly necessary. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. And it is something that we're talking about and taking seriously. So I just want you to know that. Anybody else? Public comment on anything except for the boundary adjustments?
Can I break protocol a little bit to make a comment?
We're gonna save comments.
Please.
We're gonna save comments.
Okay.
We've got our budget retreat coming up, and that we can talk about that then, or they're welcome to give you a call separately.
This just has to do with the bike park and clarification that it's the bike club that has done most of that work. We'd love the credit, but that bike club is the driving force behind that bike park.
They are, and
we
we're
appreciate
actually about to have a presentation from the bike park, so we'll hear more about that. Moving on then to our audit report. Welcome with all your good news. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Rowley, and I was the engagement partner for the city's financial statement audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025. My responsibility here is to return and report back to the council on how the audit went. Although we do work directly with management and staff to request all the documents and go through all the nitty-gritty details, we do work for the council. You are the ones that engage us to do this, and so we are reporting back to you. There are a few reports that we have to look over. That's what I'm doing. So there are 4 different reports that we'll be looking at tonight, or I guess 4 different opinion letters. There's only one big report packet, so don't worry, you're not missing anything. The first letter we will look at is our independent auditor's report, which is on page 1. Should be right towards the beginning after the table of contents. And the first, or I guess the second paragraph is what we'll be looking at right now. And it states that, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Highland City, Utah as of June 30th, 2025, and on and on and on. What that is an unmodified opinion, which means that's the cleanest opinion you can receive on the financial statements. That means that these financial statements meet the requirements of the state auditor's office, bond rating agencies, any other compliance related for the financial statements. So that's great, that's our opinion. How do we come to those conclusions? That's what the second part of this report talks about. What is the basis for our opinions? As auditors, we are required to plan and perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards in order to come to those conclusions. What that entails is a lot of test work, sampling, risk assessment, confirmations, inquiries, on and on. There's a lot of work that goes behind this, and if you ask any of the staff, they will attest that we request a lot of information. So as we look through all of that information, that's what helps us to determine whether the financial statement numbers match reality. So part of our responsibility is to maintain professional skepticism, which is, I like to call it a healthy dose of paranoia about what we're being told. We can be told something is this. We want to see outside information or evidence that supports that that really is the case. So as we go through our testing, that is how we come to those conclusions that these financial statements are materially correct. Certainly management has some responsibilities as we go through the audit. They are responsible for the day-to-day operations by recording the money coming in, the money going out, making sure that the assets of the city are safeguarded, not only the money side of assets, but also physical, the equipment, vehicles, all of those types of things. So that's part of management's responsibility. Some more of the detailed responsibilities are listed at the bottom of that page 1, the bullet point items. The first one talks about professional skepticism. The second one talks about risk assessment. And that one I think is important to mention. So if you want to go up just one page, perfect. So when we talk about risk assessment, what we're doing there is we are looking at the entity as a whole to determine what are the processes and procedures and what controls, checks and balances are in place to help make sure that accounting standards are being followed, as well as policy and like grant agreement policies are being followed as well. As we look at all of that as a whole, we look to see where could there be potential risks, where is something not quite as robust as it could be, and then we tailor our audit procedures accordingly to either increase where we feel it requires some additional work, or in some cases we can back off a little bit because the city might have very strong controls. So that's part of an audit. It's a very dynamic situation. We might have an idea of what we're walking into, and we might find something completely different. So that's just the way it works. We have to work through that. So that means as we go to select our samples, we do look at all of those controls to determine how much testing we're going to do. And we'll look at a report that discusses that momentarily as well. This report also talks about required supplementary information and what our responsibility is related to that. So there are specific items required to be, or that are included in required supplementary information. And the reason why it has that name is because normal financial statement audit reports are not required to have that information. But government accounting standards, because it's focused on transparency and accountability, these things were deemed helpful to the public in general to provide additional information and insights. So what is included in that is the management's discussion and analysis section, which immediately follows this page here. And what that is 6-7 pages of narrative information about the operations of the city during fiscal 25 and compares that to fiscal information for fiscal year 24, and then provides some change and trend analysis so that those of us who may not be so excited about numbers can have a general idea of what's going on and at least give a starting point for discussions or questions. A lot of times residents will ask, how is the city doing financially? That is one place you can point them to say, here's where we're doing, this is what changed year over year. Interpret that how you will. My job is not to interpret the results of how a city is operating, but if that's matching the goals of the city council and the city in general, then that's certainly something that can be seen. Certainly it's a little bit of a high level. There's not detail in those reports, but if there are questions on that, that's when the public can come ask specific questions of staff. In addition, there are the combining schedules and the budgetary schedules that are also considered required supplementary information. Those are towards the back, as well as so included in all of that. So what all that is to say that information is there for the benefit of the public. And although we don't give an opinion on those required supplementary information items directly, our opinion is that in relation to the financial statements as a whole, they are materially correct. Now, for your information, what we do to test that is we do reconcile all of that back to the audited numbers, and so it's all created with audited numbers. We just don't give an opinion on that directly. Then there is supplementary information, which is similar to that in relation to the whole. It is materially correct, but is also there just for additional information. Included in that is the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, which we'll look at in just a moment. But what that is a list of the federal monies that the city expended in a summary format, so you can see in total what federal monies did we spend. In addition to that, there's a separate report that discusses how did we spend it, or did we spend it appropriately, and there is an opinion on whether we did that or not. Spoiler alert, we don't have any issues with that either, so we will look at that report momentarily. Okay, so from there, let's skip to the second report, which is on page 51, so it's more towards the back. And this is the reporting required by the Uniform Guidance or the Single Audit Act. So this is over the federal monies. So I think a few more, yeah, so page 51, perfect, right there. So what this report has two sections of it. There's a section that's on compliance. So related to the federal funds, we look to see there are specific testing requirements that are necessary. We all know with state and federal money, there are strings attached to it. We can only spend it on certain things. And so required by federal code, auditors have to come in and determine whether you follow those compliance requirements. So that's what the first part of this report talks about. And we do give an opinion, and it's that second paragraph, that short paragraph, that states, in our opinion, Highland City complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs for the year ended June 30th, 2025. So again, that's an unmodified opinion, clean opinion. There were no instances of non-compliance with the federal award monies tested. So very well done. The second part of this report, it also goes on details, how did we come to those conclusions? It's very similar to the auditor report. We can go through that again if you'd like, but I figure nobody needs a nap quite yet. So we'll turn over the page. The second part of this report talks about the internal controls related to compliance. So I alluded to those processes and procedures and checks and balances that help ensure that we follow state code, and in this case, we're looking at the federal grant compliance requirements. So it's one thing to have not made any mistakes on one side, and it's another to make sure you have the processes and procedures that would prevent those mistakes. So we look at those processes and controls and determine, we use that to determine the scope of our testing. And if there's any weaknesses in those internal controls, we'd be required to report those to you so that you can make the necessary adjustment with staff to tighten up any controls or maybe lax control areas. So as we looked at and evaluated the internal controls of the city over the federal compliance areas, we did not identify any weaknesses or deficiencies in those controls. So we do feel like the city does have good processes ensuring that all those strings required by the federal monies are being followed. For your information, page 53 is the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. And for fiscal year 25, there was approximately $1.7 million of federal funds expended. We'll go a few more pages and we will look at, so page 56 is the Government Auditing Standards Report. And what this requires is all government entities in the state of Utah that undergo an audit have to also be audited in accordance with government auditing standards. And there are two portions to this report as well as the next report. So it's going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but we'll just touch on the main points. So the key aspect of government auditing standards is looking at the internal controls, in this case, over the financial reporting. So what are those checks and balances the city has over normal day-to-day money coming in, money going out, safeguarding of assets, all of that. We look at those controls to, again, just to determine the scope of testing necessary as part of our risk assessment, but not to give an opinion on the effectiveness of those internal controls. That being said, if there are any weaknesses, we are required to report those to you. So again, you can make any necessary changes. And our report states that during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control or a combination of deficiencies in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness. So we did not identify any errors or weaknesses in those internal controls. The city does have good processes. There's been a lot of improvement over the last several years in ensuring the financial statements are maintained on the proper basis. The second part of this report talks about the report on compliance and other matters. I alluded to this earlier because government accounting standards requires, its focus is on transparency and accountability. So part of what we're required to look at as auditors is laws, rules, regulations, grant agreements that if there was non-compliance with those could have a material effect on the financials. So as we look at those various compliance areas, if there was any issues or deficiencies or errors that could have a material effect, that would be a finding that would be communicated to you. And the results of our testing disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters required to report it under government auditing standards. So that's as clean a report as you can receive on that. So again, We want to commend the city and staff for your efforts there. The last report we'll look at is on page 57, so just the next page. And this is required by the state compliance audit guide. So we've been talking about federal and then financial statements, and now the state has compliance areas that they require that we look at as we come in and do our normal financial statement audit. Those areas that we were required to test this year are those bulleted towards the top of the page. So for each of those areas, we looked at testing compliance related to that, and then we also considered the internal controls related to those compliance areas. So much like the previous one, we have an opinion on the compliance, which is that the city complied in all material respects with those compliance requirements. And then like two of the other reports, it goes into how we came to those conclusions. The verbiage is almost identical, so I will not bore you with that a second or third time. The second part of this report on the next page talks about the internal controls. And so as we looked at those controls and considered those, we did not identify any weaknesses or deficiencies in the internal controls regarding those state compliance areas. So a few other things that we're required to go over. We did not have any difficulties or issues in dealing with management. There were no fights, there were no arguments, nothing of that nature. We do appreciate all of the hard work and support that the staff provide to get through an audit. And a lot of the areas, as you look at the state compliance areas, a lot of that has nothing to do with the money or the financial side. Some of that has to deal with minutes being uploaded, council members getting the required training they need. It's completely outside the control of accounting and finance. So it truly is a team effort to make sure that the city is complying in all of these various areas. So we do commend you. We also want to commend the city council for your efforts and support to accounting and staff and management so that they can do their jobs appropriately. And that is my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about that.
Erin, am I correct that this is one of the first years I remember that there are no findings?
It's been a while since we've had no findings, Mayor Bales. At least 4 years, I think, so.
So, David, really, really well done. We appreciate all the work, so thank you. Councilmember Rodella, do you have any questions?
No questions. I just love turning to the back of that page and seeing no findings. So that is something hard to accomplish, and it's really a good mark on Highland City and the good work you've been doing for us. So thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
So I might have some more questions after I have a little more time to study this. So I really appreciate all your work on this, and we have a top-notch CFO here, and I appreciate the staff's work. Just one little question I have. Your firm does an audit of many special service districts and cities.
Correct.
And because I know you audit the North Point Waste Transfer that I'm on the governing board. So how often does it happen? Because, I mean, you do a good auditing thing. How often does it happen that the state auditor gets notified and comes in and they audit a city or a special service district and have findings that you miss? Does that happen very often?
That's a good question. I don't know that I've seen not that I recall.
Yeah, I know you follow all the rules of the state, federal, and different things, but you know, I just was wondering if that happens occasionally.
You know, you've probably seen in the news recently, some entities have undergone some additional scrutiny by the state, and that's ended up in the news. And so one thing to kind of clarify as you look at what is happening, a lot of times the state auditor's office will have a specific tip or something that they're specifically digging really deep to find. And so from a financial statement audit perspective, we're looking at it in kind of I don't want to say a big picture, but we do have this concept of materiality. We cannot test every single transaction, or I can probably guarantee every entity will have some transactions that maybe were not quite properly, accurately recorded. So some of what the state auditor's office will look at is if there's some concern about improper spending, they will do a deep dive on and look at a huge number of those transactions, and they may find a handful or a dozen or so issues. The majority of those that I think we've seen in the news are not significant. So it would be an accidental personal charge on an entity's credit card that maybe didn't get reimbursed or that may not have had a proper receipt attached to the statement. So there's certainly some of that risk that's involved. And so as we look at we look at an understanding of the entity's controls, your processes, we look to see how closely are you looking at those credit card statements, for example. How closely are the expenditures being tracked? Is the budget to actual statements being reviewed by department heads? Because they know better than anybody else what's happening in their own department. So some of that is kind of what we look at to help mitigate or assess risks of those types of potential errors.
So I guess what I hear you saying is uncommon for the state auditor to come in and say, hey, we found things beyond your audit. Because I mean, we really depend on your audit and the staff and different things. And there's a lot of money, even though we're a small city, there's a lot of money that goes through our city, and we want to make sure that it's appropriated appropriately and everything. So we appreciate your work. I mean, I think your firm's been the auditor for most of the time I've been on the council.
Yeah, I believe we started doing the city's audit. In fact, I think this is probably one of the first city audits I did when I started in this field. So that was probably about 15 years ago.
Yeah, I was thinking you've been, yeah. So we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
And as Councilwoman Rodella said, it's wonderful not to see any negative findings. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Smith?
Nope.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify, so normally during a presentation, we don't go back and forth with questions and answers, but where we're headed into our budget and budget retreat, I thought it was important that we take the time to do that. So, Councilmember Courtney.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks for the report.
Welcome.
Councilmember Campbell?
Just a clarification, you talk about the government auditing standards, the gas, but you also do GAP, right?
Correct.
To ensure that we're in compliance with that. And then the other question is to do with we apparently had federal funds of 1.7 million. Give us some examples on how that was spent, or maybe David could do that. I think we have residents be interested in what that federal funds was being spent for.
Yeah, the majority of that was spent on, I believe, our PI project.
Yeah.
Chris can probably give more
water,
specifics,
right.
but the PI water project.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have. Thank you very much, and kudos to the staff. It's wonderful to have no findings. It's exceptional work.
Councilmember Rice?
I appreciate all that David has done, and I appreciate your presentation. And I would like to study it further as well, but and maybe this is just your opinion, and maybe you don't want to give it, which is just fine as well, but as you're an auditor, and I've known CPAs, but where do you consider our greatest financial risk?
The greatest financial risk?
The greatest financial risk. In other words, something that's not making as much money as maybe it should, or...
I mean, the only thing that we look at, we do not look at operational effectiveness of a city.
Okay.
So we don't give an opinion on whether you're, operating well or properly, or properly in terms of, yes, you're following the standards.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a private company profitability type situation, that's none of our focus. So really, but what you can derive from the financial statements is, what I always tell councils when these types of questions come up is look to see where the budget funds were appropriated and how the money was used, and that will generally tell you what the focus of the city is. So as you look through the financial statements, and then towards the back there are the budgetary comparison schedules, you guys are looking at the budget to actual reports often monthly and quarterly, but from a big picture, year to year, those schedules are a good place to look to see, we budgeted X amount of dollars. Did we spend it there? Are you following what you wanted to do as a council?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further question?
Madam Mayor, may I ask another question to piggyback on Liz's?
Yeah.
Maybe on that same area of areas where we could be improving. Were there any areas where looking at the internal controls that we have led you to test more thoroughly than you were anticipating coming in?
Some of the areas that typically need to be tested more in depth, just because they're a little more risky, is the revenue recognition area. So we look at receivables and revenues just to make sure that everything there is being reconciled properly. Historically, and in our experience, most entities have some errors or weaknesses in those areas just because there's a lot of information. We're talking about all of the resident utility bills that being sent out, money being applied to accounts and all of that. So we do have additional procedures related to that, but not necessarily because it's a risk of the controls themselves. The processes are good, the accounting system is good and robust to handle that. Another area is usually, it's a little more manual, but it's the accounts payable area, because sometimes you might have to accrue just a portion of an invoice back because it covers service periods from like June 5th through July 30th, and so there's some estimation going on there. So we do look at that. We reduce our scope of testing in that area just because, again, historically that's an area where errors have typically been found, not just here, but in almost every entity that I've ever audited. That if you're going to have an error, it's probably going to be there. And so we do reduce our testing or our scope. So we end up testing more than we probably need to just for that. Yeah, excellent question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. And again, David, thank you. And thanks to staff and all the department heads. I know it takes everybody. So thank you for the report. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up, we have the Highland Glen Bike Park, the open house report and proposed next steps. So just a reminder, this is a presentation item, so we're not going to do a back and forth with questions or anything, but if any council member would like to follow up with any members of the bike park, I'm sure they would be more than happy to do that. We also had a request to remind us what those numbers were about the number of riders you have and the number of Highland residents you have in your program.
Madam Mayor, as a member of the council, I would like to be able to ask questions about any presentation, if that'd be possible, just like we did on that.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Sure.
Just a quick question or something?
Quick question,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. So here to give a 2025 report and future plans, including the open house that we had. I'm Steve Sears with the Lone Peak Trails Association, and we are the 501c3 nonprofit that has been building the bike park over the last few years. Our mission is to help every rider grow their skills, and we've been able to do that in Highland. So I would show you here where we started 2 years ago on the left. Bobby Siegmiller and some of his family did an Eagle Scout project a while ago that led to the initial bike park and build, and then over time that was not able to be maintained, and that's what you see on the left. And then we've been able to essentially build a really special set of dirt jumps and a pump track that helps build foundational skills for mountain biking. And this is able to be used by someone who has never ridden a bike before, all the way up to someone who is a professional. I'd say the way that we've been able to build that you see here is really through a thriving community. And so we are done almost entirely by volunteers or donations. And so we've been able to have lots of kids and families come out and help maintain the bike park every week, as well as enjoy time riding across all ages. In addition to just volunteers, we have had financial donations, and so what you see here is the cash donations in the first row, about $150,000 over the last 2 years. In-kind donations of dirt, equipment of about $130,000, and then labor that we translated into dollars using the state nonprofit rate of volunteer rate of about $34 an hour, gets us to about $50,000, and that represents roughly 1,000 volunteer hours. So that's the funds raised, and this excludes the funds that you provided to us. Thank you for that for this fiscal cycle. And then I also wanted to talk just for a moment about how we've used that money, where essentially the majority of this money has gone to building the features that you saw on the earlier slide, allowing folks to move from beginner, never been on a bike before. I bring my 3-year-old, 5-year-old to ride that stuff, all the way up to some of the guys who are riding professionally on the bigger stuff. And so that's the new construction piece. Over the past 2 years, we've spent about $100,000 in maintenance, and that's essentially making sure that the jumps stay operational, and that we're able to continue to resurface and keep everything safe for the people who are using it. And then we currently have about $21,000 that are unspent, that will go to operating and running the bike park this year. So that's a little bit of a report. What I would say on this next part is a couple of short-term requests as we go into this next year. We've historically essentially been running the bike park through volunteer, and what we would like to do as we go into the future is make it long-term sustainable, and see the city support a maintenance budget. And so that $60,000 that you see would be the full annual maintenance budget of what it would take to run the park if we were not putting any money into maintenance. And so we'd ask you to consider that, or we're happy to work out how we can share that this year, and we're grateful for any contribution. The second short-term request that I would share is water access update. Josh has been good enough to put in a couple of hose bibs for the original jumps that we have, and as we've expanded, we now need additional hose bibs so that we can water jumps and make sure things are functioning well without crossing jump lines or features. And then the third request that I would call a short-term request, but it's in a long-term pursuit, is grant application support, where there is significant recreational funding opportunity. And if we can work together to apply for grants and write those grants, then we can continue to significantly expand the bike park.
Aaron, I'm sorry for
please.
the numbers and the requests for funding in here. Is that something that staff will bring to the budget retreat, or is that something that any of us need to keep track of specific numbers and bring those requests?
We plan to bring that as a request to the budget retreat to consider.
Thank you.
So we've also been working with city staff to build a conceptual park vision, and as well as with Blue Line and Core Athlete, who are two design and build companies. Blue Line, I think you've worked with in the past, and then Core Athlete is a bike park and trail building company. So what you see here is a preliminary concept where the existing bike park is shown on the right, and then we're looking at advanced features. What I would say here is what we're looking for is to grow the community and the progressive aspect of the park so that you can have all ages and all skill levels enjoying the facility, and we can create spaces to race and build more of the community aspect with things like pump tracks, dual slalom, and slope style course, and then various other skill features. The other things that I would point out here, number 7 on this map is a restroom, a permanent restroom. Currently there's one porta potty that services both the bike park and the soccer fields, and if we were to expand that, we believe that would be insufficient. And then also on item 2, there is a parking lot there, and we would want to consider expanding that and adding some additional parking on the bottom right and then close to the park. So that's what I would call on the out on the conceptual plan. For the open house that we had a couple of weeks ago, we had over 50 people attend and strong community encouragement for park expansion. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of the visuals here, what you'll see is that a lot of these features are asphalt or more permanent. And what that does is it costs a little bit more money up front, but allows you to have much lower maintenance cost over time, where when we're building with dirt, which we've been doing up to this point, requires constant shaping and maintenance. I'm continuing to the construction estimates here. You'll notice a very wide project cost of anywhere from $2 million to $10 million. And what I would say there is this can essentially be whatever we want it to be. So we can build something small and special for $2 million, or a little bit more significant and still special and great for the community for $10 million. Our thought here is, and our strategy is leverage. And so what we're looking to do is have Highland City consider what you would be willing to spend to support the bike park in both building and maintenance. And then we will be able to get grant matching for that, working together, as well as raise private donations. And these estimates here of the percentages are, you know, what we believe a range of things that we could get from private raise. Grant matches are usually about 50%. And then I think where we need your input is on what does Highland City's appetite for funding the park going forward. And so that brings us to the longer term requests. And so what we would ask is, right now we have that small area that is the bike park. And so we'd ask you to consider adopting or putting into the city plan that full area as use for a bike park. And then if you approve that, then we would also ask that you allow us to accept donations and prepare the rest of that area for expansion. People will often volunteer dirt or machines, or and there's things that we could do to prepare the additional area for features before we begin construction. And then I think the last long-term request that we would have would essentially start considering what sort of commitments you would want for park construction between now and 2030, and then what sort of budget we would envision for long-term maintenance. And I think with that information, we would then finalize the conceptual plan that we've started, so that we're building something that the city can support long-term, and that residents and the broader community can enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. And is this a presentation we can get a copy of?
Yes.
Perfect.
Chris has it.
Perfect. All right, so let's have some questions. Let's do questions, but we'll save any commentary or kind of opinions for our budget discussions that are going to be coming soon. So Councilmember Smith.
So I had some questions. I really appreciate all the work.
It's amazing.
And I've watched, and the number of people using this in expansion. But you're talking about a major project here.
Yes.
I guess the question I have you presented this plan to the HOA chair of the neighborhood that's right west of this, Hidden Oaks?
We have been in contact informally with Hidden Oaks, but have not done a formal presentation. Would love to get their information and
have you talked to the HOA chair?
Not the HOA, just anyone who's stopped by to the park and said that they live in the
Okay, so I think it's critical that you do that, number one. Before we go through all these plans, I just strongly recommend that, because that's an upscale neighborhood. We like these things. We like our parks to be nice, but it'd be bad to go forth with a lot of plans and then have a lot of pushback. And so I think you need to be in communication. Do you
can
know
we
who
get there?
do you
No, how
have
can we get there?
contact for the HOA chair? Because I have that for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to get
Okay,
there.
you need to be talking to the HOA chair. And that neighborhood really runs on their HOA, and there's a lot of homes in there. So you need to talk to him, show him these plans before you progress, because you don't want to have a lot of work go into something that doesn't happen.
Yeah, appreciate the advice, and that's absolutely the intent, is
Right.
we want to bring the full community along with this.
Right.
So if you leave your contact information with staff, I'm sure they have it, then they can get that contact from Dr. Smith
Yeah,
and get it to you.
I have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Other questions? Councilmember Smith?
Nope.
Not your turn, Kim. Not your turn.
I love having you as mayor.
No, sorry, Councilmember Courtney, we're going this way.
I don't have any questions, but just wanted to thank you for the open house that you put together and all the great information. It looks like a great.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
A great design that you've put together.
Historically, you've had a problem with the storm drain being filled and flooding that and destroying your area. Has that been resolved? Have you had any recent problem? We haven't had any rain, so maybe that could be the saving grace here, but do you see that potentially as something that we still need to try to mitigate?
I do think it's something that we would want to look at mitigating, where we had 1 or 2 storms this last season where we got a lot of rain in a very short period of time, and that shut down the park for a week or two as it had to dry out. So I think as we consider the expansion, that's absolutely something we would want to be mindful of, is how do we make sure we've got adequate drainage throughout the park?
Very good. And the other question is the access of that road does not have a curb cut. Is there any way, maybe Chris, that can be resolved? Because it's going to be used more and more. And we've got people going over a curb, 5-inch curb to get in there. And I understand previously when that was looked at that there was a problem with the storm drain flow or something, but can we put a pipe or something through there to make that an easier access? It's only going to get worse as we keep driving cars and trucks over a 5-inch curb.
It's something I haven't looked at, but it's something that we can take a look at and see what we can do.
Yeah.
That's all I have, other than a great thank you for everything you've done. We sometimes get the credit for all that. It's not us, it's you, and
Thank
we
you.
appreciate supporting you.
And on that curb cut, what I would say is our plan is that we would build parking at the top, and the road that goes down in would be an emergency access and a construction access, and not something that we would want people to go down.
That's good to know. Very
Really
good.
Great questions, Councilmember Campbell, thank you. Yes.
Can you bring that slide back up as where the parking's gonna be? Would you mind doing that? I came to the open house as well, and I really am impressed, but this is a lot of money. And I know that Mayor Bills doesn't want commentary, and I'm not gonna give it, but tell me where you're thinking of parking on.
So the parking that we had envisioned here is item 2 on this this conceptual design, and so you can see there's 2 spots.
Okay.
There's existing parking
All right.
on the bottom right there. Yep, that's just been circled, and then in the middle that would be additional parking, and so in the middle one would be brand new parking. And then on the bottom right, there's already a parking lot there, and I believe it would be expanding it beyond its current capacity.
So these are, I always ask hard questions. I was a teacher for 33 years, and I appreciate people that work with kids and advance all that, all you guys that are here. But so how many parking spots are there? Any idea? Ballpark it.
Current parking spots? Or what there would be with
Well,
this?
what do you have now, and where are you going with it? I mean.
Yeah, I don't have those specific numbers.
Okay.
I mean, what I would say, what I see right now is during school, all of the parking is full, and there's parking all along the road. And then when it's summer and it's not during school, there's parking available.
Okay. Okay.
But we can follow up with some specific numbers.
So, and I should have asked this question at the open house, and I thought it was really, really well organized, and all the work you guys have done, I'm amazed, really. But I just wondered if you'd ever thought about, and the amount of donations you have is very impressive to me. Have you thought about charging for this for each bike club or anything like that to try to help make this be a moneymaker?
I think we've steered away from that, and I'd probably look to Rob to comment on that. But at least what we had seen originally was that if it is free, then we're indemnified from a liability perspective. And if you're charging, then it opens up liability.
Perfect. Probably get some good follow-up questions, though. All right, go for it.
I actually have no questions. I just want to say that so many times people come to city council meeting and they say, hey, you guys should do this and we want this. But it ends there because then there isn't a plan and a solution to it. And I'm really impressed with you guys because you came to us and said, hey, this is something that we see that could be beneficial to our community, and this is how you solve it, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is how you're going to fund it. And I think that goes a long way. If there's something that you want, coming with the solutions and how to fund it always works out well in your favor. So I'm just really impressed with all this work you guys have done, and I think we'll continue to be a good partnership and work towards, extending more of this bike park for the community. It's done a lot of great things, so just a big thank you for this whole presentation.
Thank you.
Really, really just a valuable resource to the community. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Aaron, 3 questions that I don't need answered now, but I would be interested in follow-up at some point. I would be interested in knowing if there are any city regulations about parking. I know we have it for commercial, but for a park, is there any number of regulations? The second question being the one that Councilmember Rice asked, the answer about liability. And the third one, is there, if there's any benefit in designating this as a separate park, because we have like our park maintenance fund already, so is there any need, or would it help at all to designate this as a separate park, because it seems like it's very separate from Highland Glen? So not for now, but follow up.
I think that I agree.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for working with those kids. I know a bunch of those kids, and they're good kids, and they work hard, and thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one other thing, just looking at grant funding.
Yep.
I have some resources for you that would probably qualify for some work that you guys do, so maybe I can get your contact and I can send those resources over. Okay.
That would be great. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to consent items. Well, we have 2 of them, approval of meeting minutes, and note that Councilmember Courtney has provided us with amendments to the minutes, and then we also have the Central Utah 911 alternate board member appointment. So we could take a motion on those items.
I'll do that.
Perfect.
I move that the City Council approve consent item 3A, the approval of meeting minutes from January 20th, 2026. And item 3B, Central Utah 911 alternate board member appointment.
I'll second it.
So we've got a motion by Councilmember Rice and a second by Councilmember Smith, and we have electronic voting, I assume, because we're
Madam
early in
Mayor,
the meeting.
I move to amend the motion
with Councilmember
include the
Courtney's
distributed
corrections.
amendments.
Yes. Is that good? So the motion
I seek unanimous consent to
yes.
Amend the motion to include those.
So are you good with that, Councilmember Rice?
You just have to agree to his amendment.
Okay.
And amendment.
So that's unanimous consent to add the approval with the changes provided by Councilmember Courtney. And ready for the vote.
I'm in agreement too, since I seconded it.
Perfect.
Okay.
I thought you would hit me or something if you weren't. Give me a nudge.
I usually don't hit the mayor.
You can. It's fine. I expect you to if needed.
And mine isn't working, but I can give it to you when you call for me.
All right.
So.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Perfect. And that is 5-0. So moving on to our action items. So we'll have a presentation by staff. Rob, as part of your presentation, Scott asked me some good questions when we were talking last night that I didn't know the answer to, so maybe you could address those in your presentation if they're not, but he just wondered about the initial agreement to annex this into Draper, so he'll have a chance to ask questions too, but if you could address that, that would be great.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a follow-up on something that's been pending for a while, so as some of you may recall, I believe most of you were on the council at the time, there was a big to-do when Blue Bison, which was the then owner of the property just north of the Angels Gate trailhead, north of Beacon Hills in Draper City, tried to shut off and succeeded in part, shutting off trail access through their property, which is the historic trail access that ran along the Hogs Hollow Trail going north. They put up fences and blocked off our trailhead so people couldn't cross through their property to get onto the Draper Trail system. We had a lot of conversations about how to solve that issue, and kind of the compromise we reached was the property owner to the west of Angels Gate is a entity known as Alpine Joint Ventures. And we negotiated with them to trade property and with some caveats. So essentially they gave us some property just west of our irrigation pond, and I'll have a map that kind of walks through all this. They gave us some property just west of our irrigation pond for us to build a trail so that we can avoid the private property, connect directly into Draper open space. In exchange, they took the property that was the open space kind of strip along the west side of Beacon Hills Plat H. So back in 2022, the City Council approved a property exchange agreement with Alpine Joint Venture. They gave us that trail parcel. We gave them the open space parcel. And then in that agreement, we did agree to allow their property to be annexed into Draper. Specifically, we said we would not object or protest if they were to disconnect from Highland City, and we agreed that we would try to facilitate the boundary adjustment with Draper City. So that was kind of the contemplation at the time. We then...
just one quick follow-up on that point. My recollection is that the agreement, it was like 2 sentences later, specifically said that, but we recognize something along the lines of, but we recognize this as a legislative decision and we can't make any promises that we're actually going to do the things we just said. Is that?
Yes. Essentially, we said we'd work in good faith to accomplish this, but recognizing it's two cities that with two legislative bodies that ultimately make the decision. So we then, after we acquired the trail, we built that trail on the west side. It still is there today. It's a pretty nice trail if you go and walk it. Then we tried to work with Draper for a while on the back end to kind of move that forward. It took a long time to get to this point. So in December, just a month or I guess 2 months ago now, the council approved a resolution stating its intent to do this boundary adjustment. And so here's all the properties I've been talking about. So you'll see the kind of teal bright blue, that is the Draper property line, or Draper municipal boundary. And you'll see the green on the west side, that's Alpine Joint Ventures. You'll see that in the middle of that section there's a big kind of excavated portion. The owner of Alpine Joint Ventures is building a home for himself there. The north in the red, that is the former Blue Bison property, now the Alpine Hollow or the ridges at Alpine. That's the place where they blocked off the trail access going north. And you'll see that there's a little sliver of dark blue next to the kind of light blue. That was the property we took for our trail so we could connect just outside of that private property into Draper City. In exchange, we gave them just that little sliver of land next to the Beacon Hills, those lots there on the west side. And here's kind of a closer image. So there's, again, on the north side is that trail parcel we acquired next to our pond. And on the south is the Beacon Hills open space parcel that we gave to exchange with Alpine Joint Ventures. So that's kind of the history of where we got and how we got to tonight's item. As I mentioned, the proposed boundary adjustment is to shift the property we own, the trail, into Highland, and then to move the Alpine Joint Ventures property that we gave to them into Draper with the rest of their property that's already in Draper. The process is multi-steps. There's a lot of procedures. We started that back in December with the resolution. We published notices. Part of the notice is the right to protest, which only applies to certain entities and individuals. And we're at the bolded parts right now, which is holding a public hearing, and then if approved, you adopt an ordinance to do that. And then there's some filing and notices that staff takes care of on the back end. In the packet, we did receive 2 objections from residents who live they're in Beacon Hills, they're backing onto that open space parcel. So those are absolutely objections that the council can consider. They're just not, quote, protests under state law that trigger a boundary commission hearing and anything else. So something for you to consider, but it doesn't mandate any particular decision. There are some current concerns with the Alpoint, this transaction, and some concerns about potential development. We don't know of any development on there. We haven't asked for a plan. Given that he's building his home there, we don't anticipate much in the way of development. I don't think he would have spent the time and effort and money to build a home if you've driven past it. It's a big project to then put in a large development next to his house on the hill. But regardless, there's no way for a road in there to connect. There's no way for a road to connect through there into Highland. It's all lots, and so they wouldn't have a way to connect even if there is some kind of development there. So as staff, let's see if I can click back into it. Okay. As staff looks at it, the open space parcel has already been sold to Alpine Joint Ventures. We see no reason to keep it within Highland given the history involved with this. We have a preference for Highland to keep our property that we own in Highland City so we maintain all control over it. And so our recommendation is to hold the public hearing, consider comments, and then ultimately approve this. Ultimately, the decision is yours. This is a legislative decision. With that, Mayor, that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and hold our public hearing, and then after that, we'll have some council comments and discussions. We'll open our public hearing. You've got this.
This is my first time ever.
Perfect. You go ahead. Tell us your name.
My name is Stephanie Diamond.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I live up in Highland on Ponce de Leon, where this is affected. We just bought our house December of 2024, and we actually had no idea this was happening. And even so, there was no notices sent within 2025, any communication sent up into our area or our neighbors' areas explaining this new annexation of land. You had mentioned, Mr. Patterson, that there was no road into Highland. Now with that annexation of the property being taken away from Highland into that lower half and given back to AVJ properties. But there is that road right next to our house that Highland uses right now for their water district road. And our concern is that that property owner will then, there's been speculation and talk about him selling his land into 5-acre properties, not just his. This is all talk, but there is worry that if that were if that were the case, then Draper would then have an access road into Highland, into our neighborhood, where lots of kids are on the roads and on the sidewalks, walking their dogs, playing with other friends, riding their bikes, and everyone is very cautious. And that is something that we worry about. And I don't know if that is something that Highland, with that road going into the waterworks, into the water district, if that is a possibility, because it does run into that property where Draper will own. And that's a huge concern of all those cars coming into the neighborhood, especially from the new build community that they're building currently. Did I miss anything? That's up in the corner. For the new, now I do have a question. I don't know,
So we don't typically take questions right now, but if you would like to follow up with your question with our attorney, you're welcome to do that.
Okay. And that would just be with the property, like with the new access at the very top by the water of the parking and infrastructure, if there will be more parking, just because it does overflow into the neighborhoods.
and it does get very crowded. So now with all that, we're just wondering follow-up from there. Thank you.
Perfect. And we've had lots of conversations about this area of the city. So if you were to go back and look at some of our minutes and meeting things, I think you would find some of the information you're looking at, but you're welcome to follow up as well with
Okay.
Mr. Patterson.
Okay, cool.
And we appreciate you coming, and welcome to Highland. It's
Thank
nice
you.
to have you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Did you want to comment also, or did she hit it all? She's the best, right? Perfect. Perfect. Okay, Councilmember Courtney, we'll end the public hearing. I'm not very aggressive with that yet. Councilmember Courtney, questions?
I just have one question about the roadway that it was mentioned. I just pulled it up on Google. Is it a sort of a dirt roadway there, right between? Looks like.
I believe it's the Metropolitan Water District property. It's where we've had some water drainage things we've worked out with them. It touches that open space parcel just like 19 feet
on the very
worth.
south end, it looks like?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can you put that up? I beg your pardon, Madam Mayor, but can you put that?
Fair ask. Councilmember Courtney, other questions?
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Councilmember Campbell.
Is this, to Rob, I'm trying to understand the process that we're going through here. Is this an annexation, a de-annexation, and an annexation? What's really happening procedurally? Because that then gets back to what standards apply to the process that we're working on. Is it an annexation process?
So, yes, in a general sense. So, state law has procedures for adjusting municipal boundaries. The typical ones you hear about are annexations. That's the most common. Disconnections happen infrequently, where someone removes property from the city's boundaries. And there's this type of thing, which is called a boundary adjustment. It's essentially, you can go either way. It's setting, cities agree mutually to shift their boundaries between them. So essentially we are disconnecting a small portion of property from Highland and annexing a small portion into Highland.
But it still requires the same notification to neighbors and a public hearing?
It requires a public hearing, yes. It doesn't require a mailed notice to property owners outside of the property that is being adjusted.
Within what distance?
No distance. It is, if you are within
Oh,
the
it
area
just has
being
to be
adjusted.
in that property itself.
So in this case, it was Alpine Joint Ventures in Highland City, who were the property owners affected.
Do we ever go beyond the law and do a notification to adjacent property owners? Because it does impact those adjacent property owners.
Not typically. We usually just follow what state law says unless the council has given us a code or an ordinance or direction otherwise.
Okay, we may look at that. Thank you.
So just for Councilmember Rice, this is the parcel we were talking about. I'll bring up the aerial as well. So you see, this is the little open space parcel. Not that one. That one's not little. It's still not little. Nope. It's really hard to click because it's small. There we go. So there's the open space parcel, and you'll see it runs down here, which is what I assume the property you were talking about. So that's the property that is owned by the Metropolitan Water District, and it runs going into that unannexed area just to the west there. To the east of it is some trails and then our water tank there.
So where does the water flow when it comes down there? And I'd like to know exactly where you're worried that the road will come in. This is just a heads up for me. And then my other question is, on that open space strip, are those strips going to be available for those residents to purchase? This is kind of off topic, I get it, but.
So we have given this property, we exchanged this property. Alpine Joint Ventures owns this now.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's already under their control and ownership.
So where is Ms. Diamond, correct, concerned about where the road's going to go? Can you
So just to the south
explain that
there.
for me just a little bit better? Where you think it might go, correct?
Well, can I ask like a follow-up to there? If that like.
Can you make sure you speak into the microphone?
Oh, yes, sorry. that property that Highland owns that goes right up against it, where it's like a rectangle and that triangle corner, that whole space, that road runs right through it. So if that is still owned by Highland, they can't build a road that goes through it, correct? Okay. So with that, okay, that's all. That was the road that we were referring to.
Okay.
That we weren't sure how that went with the annexation of property.
I drove up there, but I didn't really look at that specifically. I looked at something else.
Thank you. Yep. Councilmember Rice,
No further
more
questions?
questions?
No questions,
Councilmember Rodella.
I don't have any questions. I just want to make sure that any questions they have or issues that they just have an opportunity to talk to you. But we've gone over this a lot, so I'm fine with it.
Sure. And you're welcome to give any of us a call as well, and we're happy to talk. So concerns are taken seriously. Councilmember Smith.
So I just had some questions. This open space area behind the homes, as I've seen in design of many of the open space neighborhoods, I think that was for a potential trail.
Yes, back in the day.
So, and I understand the discussion because I think there were two mayors that negotiated this. So let me ask a question. So this part that we actually sold to Alpine Joint Ventures, and I think in the supplemental material we found from the city staff, it was about what? How many acres? 0.33 or something?
0.3 acres, just under a third of an
Okay,
acre.
and how, I didn't see how big the section is that we got. I know there's all the, you know.
About a quarter of an acre, so it was a bit smaller. When we went through the discussion, we noted that there was a discrepancy. We weren't getting square footage for square footage, which normally is a little bit of a concern. The problem we had is Alpine Joint Ventures didn't need our property, but we really needed their property. So it was kind of a, this is what they were willing to give us in exchange, is they wanted, that was the fair market value of the property. But yes, our parcel is smaller. It's a quarter of an acre. You can see it there. Theirs is just under a third.
A third of an acre, okay. Well, I know the discussion that's went on all of this, and I think we were really just desperately trying to get access for the bikers that were, and the pedestrians and things that wanted to go up into Hog Hollow. But I guess the big question I have is, we're going through this to have access up there, but there's the development that's happening up there, and if these other places in Draper develop, what's the chance that that trail will be totally cut off? I mean, do we have guarantees from Draper that there'll always be access through there?
We do not, unfortunately. I think it was 2 fiscal years ago. I can't remember exactly when. We allocated, I want to say $20,000. That was, Draper said, pay us $20,000 and we'll build you a trail connection that goes from there up into our trail system. And then Blue Bison sold, and now there's a different plan for trail connection. So we couldn't predict the future, but we don't know that this will be permanently useful. Currently, it is an access, and anyone can go along it and get into the open space property onto the mountain.
So do we have some negotiating tools, though, to kind of negotiate with Draper if we build a trail to go there and say, hey, we've gone through this expense, we paid you some money, are you going to work with us? You know, what's kind of your feel? I mean, you can't predict the future.
I'd say this location, no. Really, the location that we're more looking at is actually on the Hogs Hollow Road or Hogs Hollow Trail.
Right.
Instead of the location to the west. This was really, I mean, to all of you who are here and remember, this was a way to get around when Blue Bison put up a fence. And so the mayors at the time between Draper and Highland made the deal, and Alpine Joint Ventures request, right, to help us get around the fence to allow access still to those trails was, well, let us annex into Draper so that all of our property is in one municipality. So the trail does not service a huge purpose moving forward. I don't believe it will. It helped in the meantime, and Alpine Joint Ventures just asked for this in return to help us during that time.
And I recall several meetings with Draper leadership and former Mayor Osler having some pretty strong words with their mayor about the arrangement that we had. but it's led to this. So we separately from this, we do think we've secured a trail access more permanently. It just won't be at this location going forward.
So if we de-annex this 0.3 acres, we do get the 0.25 acres.
Correct, within Highland city boundaries.
Into the city boundaries. Well, I've always, you know, in I campaign, I like to protect the city boundaries. I guess I'm not going to quibble over 7/10 of an acre. But, you know, some of the things that I've said in the past about this has come true, you know, because I was really opposed to the Micron property all going into Draper and Highland, and I was told, well, you don't have to worry, but it's just going to be as high a density as it can be. And that's a problem. So I just, you know, just out of principle, I have a hard time voting for any de-annexation, but I can support this because it's 7/10 of an acre. So.
Any other questions? And I appreciate that.
I
You've been
do.
very consistent about
Madam
that.
Mayor.
Yeah, who is that?
Madam Mayor.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. I do have one more, and it was still back on the road. It's because I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Scott said. It's about the trail, but sure shooting, Draper's going to come and ask to put a road there. And we just aren't going to do that, right? I mean, we're not going to let Draper do that.
Well, they'd have to acquire the property from the Metropolitan Water District, and they're
Water
actually,
districts don't sell.
they're a larger entity than Draper is. They control a lot of water, and that's connected, I think, close to their main aqueduct there. So they're going to be, I don't foresee them selling that land to anyone. Theoretically, it could happen. We would still have some recourse in whether we would allow anyone to connect to our city streets as we have generally. So there would be quite a process involved. I think would be very unlikely.
We are pretty cautious with our connections in lots of ways. I think we're ready for a motion unless there are any other questions.
I move that the City Council adopt the ordinance approving the adjustment of the common municipal boundaries of Highland City and Draper City.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Campbell, and that was Councilmember Rodella with the second, and we'll go ahead and vote. Councilmember Rice, are you up and going or no? No worries if no. I am. Perfect. Let's do it.
I'm not, so.
Okay, well, that makes it fun. Okay, Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
And we can reveal. Perfect. That is 5-0. And we will move on to item 4B, which is the city prosecutor assignment, which is me. So the current city prosecutor is retiring. And so we have Mr. Holland here, who's in the audience, who I would recommend that we appoint to this position. So just so you all know, I know that Councilmember Courtney sent out some questions, and I think staff answered those, that staff has gone over the contract completely, and it's well understood what the agreement is. This is actually cheaper than what we have been doing previously. I listened to Alpine's meeting where they grilled him extensively. One good point that Chief brought up, William, is that it's really nice for him to have somebody who he's able to call whenever he needs to. So he was he thought this was a good idea. The other thing, we're not going to go over the financial details that we have with Lone Peak Public Safety because we've done that a lot of times, but just I had asked the question, what percentage of this is paid by Highland versus Alpine? And Highland pays 60% and Alpine pays 40%. So just to answer that question. So we could go ahead and take a motion for that unless anybody has any questions that they would like to ask.
I'd like him to introduce himself, kind of, and tell us about himself and where he went to school and all that good stuff.
More than happy to do so. Mayor, council members, my name is Carl Holland. I grew up in Utah County, born and raised in Orem. Most of my family still lives here. I have a brother who took a sabbatical of life to go and live in Seattle, and he actually just recently moved into Highland. So this is an area where my family comes and enjoys. We enjoy you guys' trail systems a lot during the summer, especially hiking with our families. I went to BYU as an undergrad and then BYU Law School. After BYU Law School, I clerked with the Utah State Supreme Court and then the Utah Federal District Court, and then I clerked in the 2nd District Court up in Ogden. Then I started working as a prosecutor for the Utah County Attorney's Office. Prosecuted there for about 8 years. I started in Justice Court doing the same sort of work that I would be doing here for you, and then moved on to everything from DUIs to homicides, before going and taking a position at the Attorney General's office, where I ran their Internet Crimes Against Children task force. And that's where I was for the past 4 years. I'm excited to have a less heavy and emotionally taxing caseload. And right now, in addition to this, I'm the executive director for Utah's statewide association of prosecutors. So I represent all the prosecutors in the state in their communications with the governor's office and the legislature and the state Supreme Court.
Perfect. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So our city attorney graduated from BYU Law School, correct? Did you know
I did.
him?
I was a year behind you. I was 2015.
Oh, see, and I wouldn't have recognized him. They didn't allow beards, so.
I had hair on the top of my head and not the bottom of my head then, so.
Okay. Anything else?
How are you on encroachments? You ready to prosecute on encroachments?
You know, I think that it's important that we recognize, especially at this level, the job of the city prosecutor is to make sure that the city runs the way that the city expects, right? This is really where the Constitution rubber meets the road. We have got a social contract. We get to decide what kind of community we want to live in, and the enforcement of those laws is really important to make sure that you can maintain the kind of community you want. So
right.
I think it's very important to make sure that we're holding people to the standards of the community.
Well, we're a little more attentive to that than we have been in the past.
Yep.
So.
And that's important to know, right? And so I think we're working with law enforcement, with city administrator, to make sure that I'm performing these services in a way that the council is happy.
Right. Thank you.
I'm just curious which junior high you went to in Orem.
If you really want to know, I went to Oak Canyon Junior High for a year and then Canyon View for 2.
Okay.
So.
I'm ready for a motion if you guys are, especially because you went to BYU, so.
Yeah,
it's
done.
Deal.
Yeah.
Done deal. I move that the city council ratify Mayor Bill's appointment of Carl Holland as a Highland City prosecutor and direct the mayor to sign the attached contract.
I'll
second it.
Ah, double second.
Perfect. So we've got a motion by Councilmember Rodella and a second by Councilmember Smith. And Rice, but I think we can only have one on the record. So
Councilwoman Rice can have it.
either
It's okay.
Councilmember Smith, we'll give Councilmember Rice the next one, and we'll go ahead and take a vote. And while we're voting, just thank you for your work. When I read your resume, I thought that is a hard job that you've been doing, and man, so much appreciation for that work. That's rough. So thank you. Okay, and is everybody voting? Look at this. Perfect. And that is a 5-0. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. All right, we've got the surplus of the excess water meters. This is item 4C, and that is Chris.
Thanks, Mayor. This was an item that had been on our agenda for the last meeting, and we had to pull it off. We wanted some additional information, but just as part of our PI meter install project that we had over the last couple of years, we actually ended up ordering more meters than what we actually needed, and we're overstocked at this point. So we want to consider placing 300 1-inch Census iPearl meters as surplus so that we can try to sell those. Originally, the purchase price was $258. Current pricing for meters like this are about $280, but if we were to try to return them to Mountain Land, they would only give us $180.99. So rather than returning them, we'd rather try to sell them and at least get about $240 is our goal. We did verify with our fund manager with the state, since we did get state funds to help purchase these. They are okay with us showing a credit and going back to them and just showing them what money we got in. And we still have some additional funding that we can submit for reimbursement, so we'll just do a bit of a balance to offset the difference on returning these meters. But he did say that they've done that before, and it shouldn't be an issue with that.
Wait, okay, so I just have a question.
No, it's not your turn.
Right.
I will let you know. I will let you know when it's your turn. This is Councilmember Campbell. Sorry, it's just rules. Yeah. I'm so strict.
I don't have any questions. I think it's a great plan.
Perfect, Councilwoman Rice. Kim, you're up next. You're on deck. Is that what they call it in baseball? If you're next? Okay, you're on deck.
I was on base.
So I'm just curious, who are we going to sell this to? Are we going to sell it, to the new developer, a developer, or?
We probably would more likely sell it to municipalities, probably some smaller cities, possibly a local HOA.
Okay.
Other, probably not generally, neighbors.
It was probably a dumb question. I just wanted to know where we're going.
Complete legitimate. We annually will send our people out to water certification courses at the Rural Water Conference. We'll probably be doing some marketing there and talking to some of the communities that might be looking to purchase some of these and saving a few bucks on the way.
So if we have these meters that give, like at my house, if one gives out, do I buy that from the city, or do you replace it, or how?
Usually we just replace it.
Okay. Or do we have some of those on hand?
We have a lot in stock. Our PI department is keeping about 200 of them that we had surplus. Our culinary water department is going to purchase several of the 3/4 inch meters. So it was really just these 1-inch meters that we didn't feel had a home with us anymore.
So if Highland is, soon to be built out, do we have one for like every, no, that's really a hard question to answer. One for every, I get it, never mind, scratch that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodella, it's your big moment.
Yes, I'm up. Okay, so I have a question. So you have 300 of these, probably selling them for around $240, so surplusing, making about $72,000 back, I assume. That $72,000, is it going to go towards reimbursements for this water project, or towards the scope of work for the grant project, or will you be applying it to something else?
For this project, we have, like I said, we have some additional reimbursements that we would be submitting to the state, but we'll deduct that $72,000, whatever we get for this, off of that reimbursement.
Okay. I just know per that contract it has to go back, so just making sure that it goes back towards that scope of work. Okay.
That question was worth the wait. It was good. Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
So I'm going to make a comment, and then I'm going to talk about why I'm going to recuse myself from this vote. So my neighborhood has its own little pressurized irrigation system, and we need to install meters. The neighborhood just goes back and forth. And I keep saying, you guys run out of time. So I've talked to the irrigation board, of which I'm a member. So I'm going to declare that, and we'd like to buy 50 of these at that price, and we have the funds. So I won't vote on this, of course, because it's a conflict of interest, but at the same time, we would like 50 of the 300 if we can get them. I've already talked to Chris. He thought I was talking about vac trucks, but
And Aaron, there's no problem with that, and there's a process where we can list them on the city website, so that's not a
so we can just
problem.
Exactly. So our code does say that no one in the city gets kind of preference. When I say in the city, I mean like staff members or council or anyone. And so really what we would do is we're going to put them on the city website for 2 weeks that, hey, these are available. Whoever contacts us and says they're willing to pay at least $240, we would sell to. Ultimately, it would go to the highest person. So if
when does it go on the website?
We will make sure to notify the council at large when it does go on the website.
Okay.
And then, they'll be there for 2 weeks. Whoever wants to purchase it, at least $240 would be able to, and then anything in addition to that, we would ultimately put on the surplus website, is our current plan at this point.
So where would we find that web or site?
The website, it'll be on our website for 2 weeks.
Just on our city website?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so we'll let council know when we do make that, when we post that.
Okay.
Just for clarification, I appreciate Councilmember Smith's recusing himself, but in reality, he could vote on this in a conflict of interest, just declaring his conflict of interest, but still have the ability to vote. Is that correct? Otherwise, we wouldn't have open space fees gone.
That is correct.
Okay.
It is a choice by Councilmember Smith to not participate.
And good choice. Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Smith, any other questions?
No.
Okay. Ready for a motion then? Can you speak into your microphone, or is it on? Perfect.
Oh, I thought I had it. I move that the city council approve the resolution declaring the 300 census one, how do you say it? 1 per 1 inch?
IPRO.
1 inch water meters as surplus, and authorize the sale or disposal of these items as the city administrator deems best for the city.
I'll second it.
A second, okay, so we've got a motion by Councilmember Rice and a second by Councilmember Campbell, and we can go ahead and vote. Would you like to do a voice vote?
It's not refreshing here.
You can go ahead.
Yes.
Perfect. And that's 4-0 with Councilmember Smith recusing himself. On to item 4D. Just before we start on this one, I had heard from a council member or two that they might be interested in continuing this item to the budget retreat because it is such a large cost, and it might make sense to discuss it then when we're talking about the budget as a whole. So we can continue with the presentation, or if anybody was interested in that idea, we could have a motion to continue. I'm down either way.
I move to continue this item to the next council meeting.
I'll second.
So we've got a motion.
And the reason that I say the next council meeting is because we're going to have to vote on this at a council
Yes.
meeting. We can still discuss it at the budget retreat.
Perfect.
It just looked like, Aaron, like you had a question about why I was
Yes, and
pushing to the next council meeting.
I'm sorry, there was a motion in a second, right? So we're doing questions, okay, about the motion. Doing it, okay, so my understanding was council was thinking more to maybe look at this in the fiscal year 27 budget, but you're thinking still maybe fiscal year 26, Councilmember Courtney? Oh, okay, but next meeting, I say.
At the
I
next
understand.
meeting, we've been through the budget retreat, and we can either decide to just deny it or drop it off or
Have
whatever.
an idea where things fall and what
if
the
we're
other
pushing it out,
priorities
but-
are.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
So that was a motion by Councilmember. Was there a question? You can go ahead.
Well, I do. So if we push it to the retreat and then to the next council, it goes on the next year's when I think they need it this year?
So what we can do is talk about it at the retreat and decide if this is going to be a budget priority or not, and then we can decide if we need to, that we can vote on it at our next council meeting, or we can push it off until the next fiscal year. It just gives us the opportunity to talk about it and decide where it lands in our list of priorities.
It was on my list for the retreat, so.
Perfect.
But just for clarification, it is in this year's budget, yes or no?
So we had budgeted to hire some additional part-time staff and to purchase a vac trailer. But as we've explored that option, the vac trailer just really won't be sufficient for what our needs are.
So it's more funds that you're
So
needing
it would
than
be
what is
more funds
budgeted?
if we were to go this route.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a
I get it.
departure from what we had originally planned, which is.
I get it. Very good.
There's
Thank
about
you.
$500,000 that isn't in
Yep.
the budget.
Yeah.
So we had a motion by Councilmember Courtney and a second by Councilwoman Rodella. Did you have any questions, Councilmember Smith?
No.
Okay, then we're ready.
And we're voting on continuing.
We're voting on continuing. So this vote is, a yes vote is to continue, and a negative vote is to not continue, in which case we would need an alternate motion, right, Doug? We'll see how it rolls.
We could either, someone could make any other motion they want on the topic, or nobody could make any motion. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Perfect, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, so that is a 4-1, and we will talk about that at the budget retreat and then be discussing it, I'm sure, at a future council meeting. We've got the well chlorination project, which is Mr. Trustee again. I'm guessing we're going to have lots of council questions about this one, so let's go ahead and do your presentation, and then we'll come back, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about chlorination because I think there's a lot of concerns and worries about this. This is an excerpt from a letter from the State Department of Drinking Water, Division of Drinking Water. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has provided guidelines and rules that support chlorine as a disinfectant in drinking water systems. Chlorine residual assists in reducing the likelihood of disease for microorganisms in water systems. Introduction of chlorine into a system has been found to be an efficient, safe, and effective means to improve water quality and protect public health. Just some background. Highland as a city, we follow state guidelines in collecting and reporting routine water samples throughout our distribution system. We are required to pull 25 samples each month. Those samples are taken in 2 different iterations, so they're not all taken at one time, so that they kind of are spaced out throughout the month and in different locations throughout the city. This testing is used to look for total coliform and E. coli. Total coliform is a bacteria that is an indicator to indicate if there's any possible contamination in your system. In the past, we have had some higher tests that have come back, and when those happen, we deal with them. It's not been to the point where we have to send out public notices or alert the residents or anything like that. We've been able to get past with what we've done on those. Here's a map that I just thought I'd share with the council that shows the location of where our tests are taken. The red routes are not bad. When I first saw it, I thought, uh-oh, red is always bad. But that's just one of the routes that we take at one point in the month, and then the yellow are the other times of the month that we test, and the green are alternative sampling locations that we would have. Currently, we don't chlorinate our water. I think the council is aware of that. 3 of our existing wells have the ability to chlorinate should we choose to. Wells 1 and 5 do not have that ability. And so just because we are going to add that ability to these 2 wells does not necessarily mean that we will begin chlorinating. That will only happen when and if we decide we're at the point that we need to. We have used batching in the past where we just do some localized chlorination to help offset some of the higher coliform tests that we've gotten. That's not a routine. I think if it ever got to the point that we had to do that fairly consistently, then staff would make a recommendation to start chlorinating the system. But we're not at that point yet right now. But we just, basically we want to have the ability to start to chlorinate when and if we need to. Once we do start chlorinating at our source sites, once we start, we can't stop. That was a question that council had asked that I honestly wasn't sure. I've never done that before. But the state's recommendation, at least, is once you start doing the chlorine injection, that you don't stop.
So is that a recommendation or is it statute?
Because when you chlorinate, you have to basically, you're permitted through the state, so I think that would be a condition of your permit. So I don't think it is really, it's more than just a recommendation. I've got some layouts of where the chlorine would be added to the well sites. This is well number 1. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen up there, but I think you can see the black. where we don't have enough room in the existing well structure, so we actually would be installing a shed that would house the equipment for the chlorination. It's kind of to the west or to the left side, upper kind of left on this picture. There's a picture of the sheds that were included on the bids for these, and this is well number 5. This is the one over kind of by Myers Meat. And you can kind of again see to the west or to the left of the existing well house where we would place the chlorination building shed. We received a state grant for $1 million to help fund some of our water improvement projects. That included the rehabilitation for well number 5, which had some air entrainment that caused the water to look cloudy, and just as a side note, that well is currently feeding the city right now, so we are getting more use out of that now. We also added the PRV project that we had this last summer to add some additional PRVs to the city to help just kind of regulate the pressures that we have. So the remaining balance of that would be put towards funding the chlorination of wells number 1 and 5. The state funds are required to be spent by the end of June or the beginning of July this year. So that's why we're bringing this project to the council right now, so we can get that project done, at least substantially completed by the end of June.
Okay, so it is really that we have to spend them, but we expect that we'll be getting the invoices and actually cutting the checks by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we will have additional funds city funds that will have to come to help pay the balance, because the bid award will be more than what we have in the remaining balance of that. So the thought is that we will use all the state funds at first, and then we will pick up the tail end of it. We solicited bids. We actually had some pretty good bids that came out of this project. 6 different companies bidded for this. VanCon was the low bid with a combined total of $467,000. Adding a 10% contingency to their bid, which we typically do on construction projects, would bring that total amount to $513,700. And as discussed probably in a little bit more detail on the staff report, we still would have to add some SCADA to both of our well houses, which between the 2 of them, we've kind of estimated a budget of about $50,000 for that. We haven't gotten a price yet. Some of our numbers were a little bit inflated, I think, because it's, gives me more comfort to come in high rather than to tell the council why we need more money. So that's what we've done, and I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. So, Mayor.
Perfect. Councilwoman Rice, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. So can you accept, like well 1, so there's only 2 wells that need to be fitted
Correct.
For chlorination.
Yeah.
And I want, the people watching that we're not chlorinating. I know you said that, but I've received several emails that I would love to have read into the minutes. But so can you take a bid from one company and not the other, or is it cheaper to go with the same company for both bids?
Usually it's better to go with both bids from one company.
Okay.
And that's as much as anything else to cut down on administration of both projects and to coordinate the 2 of them together.
And I think you covered this a little bit, but I'd like you to just go on the record a little bit more about how you've had to flush the system when you took me on a tour, which was really informative, and I really appreciated your time. But talk about how close we've come a couple of times, so the people know that we're, I don't want it chlorinated, but fitting it for chlorination and being prepared is the ultimate goal in my mind, and it's necessary in the long run as we become more populated. But I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, like I said, we have to test monthly. We've had some tests where the total coliform has been a little bit high. Usually that happens in the summer when we have higher temperatures. What we're required to do, we report all of our testing to the state, and usually we have to do continued testing. Where we've had some of these higher numbers, or these hits that we typically call them, have usually been on the extremities of the city. So it's been up towards the north, like towards Beacon Hills, and also towards the south, like around 9600. And I think, you know, a big part of that is because those are the lines that don't get the same amount of circulation. Last summer, because some of our numbers were higher than what we liked, we actually added some chlorine to one of our, well, actually to all of our tanks. That's what we called batching, and that was what kind of needed to happen for us to be able to get the numbers back down in line with where we wanted to see them.
And you did that by hand?
That's
not
done by
turned on
hand.
the system.
It's a real cowboy way to try to get, you know, your line system. You start dumping in chlorine and you keep testing, and if your numbers are still not what you want, you dump in more. The one advantage, obviously, with the chlorination system at your source is you can control it much more efficiently, and you can also do it in much smaller doses. You know, anytime you batch, the concern is always going to be, are we going to overbatch?
Overdo it.
I think you definitely are more likely to have a smell or a taste if that's the way it's done. Okay. I know that some cities have done that as their chlorine treatment. One city I won't mention by name used to do it about every other month, maybe even monthly, I don't know, until they finally, the state said, look, this, no, you will chlorinate your system. I also think, you know, Highland is probably the biggest water provider in the state that is not currently chlorinating their water.
So, I know the state says once you start, they don't want you to stop. Is it because of the machinery, the technology? Is it their rule?
It's actually because once you start to chlorinate, there's other byproducts that are in the water, and so you could actually, you know, the intent of chlorinating is to provide safer drinking water, but if you start to chlorinate and then stop, you actually are not really providing safer drinking water. You actually are starting to provide possible additional contamination.
Okay, well, and is this a time I can put in for emergency preparedness comment? Probably not. Yeah. I'm probably done. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate all the work you do.
Anything else? From Councilmember Rice? Hey, I learned that coliform is different than chloroform, FYI. Fun fact. That's different. I fact-checked.
Like physical and physical.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I'm going to have problems with chloroform, which can also be found in drinking water sometimes, by the way.
You know, there was somebody who had some greenish tinge to the water I was seeing in your monthly report. Maybe they actually had some
it's possible. All right, Councilwoman Rodella, what do you have?
Nothing.
Councilmember Smith.
So, I've got some comments. It's kind of interesting because I'm in kind of a different situation because I'm not only a physician, but I'm also on the public health board for the county. So I'm going to express some personal opinions. First of all, I think we'd be better off to spend this money on chlorinating the Highland Glen Pond so that we wouldn't have to close it every year because of E. coli. Yeah, but that's kind of personal opinion. You know, I think most of the citizens in the city are not really aware that we don't chlorinate. I actually, when I was campaigning, put a flyer out. I worked with Chris and stuff and kind of publicized that so more people know that now. I mean, when we rebuilt well 4, which is our main source of water, if I understand, you could chlorinate that one if you had to, and also wells 2 and 3 were somewhat refurbished. So, but well 1 is one of our main sources of water and has been since the inception of the city, if I understand right. 5's always been questionable. And I'm not opposed to going ahead and getting everything set up for chlorination. My personal preference is I kind of prefer not to drink chlorinated water unless I have to. And I know the safety aspects and all that stuff, but there's a difference in taste. One of the things I do worry about, and you briefly touched on that, is sometimes there's mistakes made in the chlorination. I think they over-chlorinated the swimming pool there in Pleasant Grove and made a ton of people sick. So there's always that chance of something malfunctioning and throwing a lot of extra chlorine into the water. So there is some health detriment from too much chlorine, of course. So I'm kind of like 50-50, but I kind of want to briefly, obviously we've got $500,000 in this grant that we can use, but I kind of like to just touch upon the elephant that's in the room, because one of the issues that we have is that with the phenomenal growth in the city west of us and the continued growth in our city and a manufacturing firm that's going to need a lot of water, we really are going to be desperate for water situations. And it seems to me like I'd rather have this money spent to deepen one of our wells or fund part of that, because I think we need to look at least one well and deepen it like we did with 4. Now that, I think it cost us $1.5 million to do that, but I think that's a more pressing issue in my mind. So I'm not opposed to voting for this and getting prepared to chlorinate if we need to, but I think we've got some real pressing issues coming that we need to find funds for, because we're going to have to lower our wells when the aquifer is drained out, and we're having an exceptionally dry winter. And we may have wet months. I pray for that wet months, because if not, do you have, and this is off the subject a little bit, but you monitor the level of the water in our wells. How much have they dropped with this dry winter?
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen much of a drop in our wells, but you know the well levels are not really, they don't coincide with the seasons that we have. You know, the time frame that it takes from the snow melt to infiltrate into the aquifers and make their way into the city could be over a year.
But the snow melt plays a role, obviously.
Certainly it plays a role. It's not an instantaneous or even, you know, a 6-month delay on what we would see. It's the aquifer has so much more water in it. It moves kind of separately as a beast. I'm not saying that we won't see drops in it because of it, but it just
right, because there's been comments about the wells down when we had real dry season about 3 years ago. So, you know, I just think it's something we need to discuss. Maybe chlorinating everything isn't top priority in my mind, but I'm not going to oppose this.
I'm interested in your take. So as a physician, what do you think about chlorinating generally?
Well, you know, it's kind of become, as we call in medicine, the standard of care. My only concerns is when mistakes are made and things are over-chlorinated, because that can make you sicker sometimes than the bacteria that you might be exposed to, which basically gives you diarrhea and can be treated. So I just, if there's good safeguards in place that you don't run the risk of having some of these over-chlorinations, and they're monitored pretty carefully, I'm not opposed to it. But there are a lot of citizens in this city that have been pretty opposed to adding things to our water. And, you know, there was a big debate at the state level on fluorination, and we've never done that. So I'm kind of on the fence on this. I mean, from public health, it makes sense, but it can also be a bad thing if too much chlorination is put in. And the water does not taste as good, I promise. Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. My question is purely rhetorical, which is, at what point is the state going to make us do this anyway? Councilmember Courtney.
I had two sets of questions. The first is just a little bit about chlorination. My understanding is that the real risk in our system isn't so much the water as we bring it out of the ground, it's the rest of the system. Is that?
Yeah, I typically you see, you know, contamination comes from other places, not your watering source. It comes from cut-ins, people who, you know, we have our backflow program that we have worked hard on and we've brought to the council, but we still can get contamination that comes in from backflow, construction. Sometimes, you know, it's kind of interesting. Recently, there was a line that was replaced that had almost an inch worth of silt in the bottom of the water line that's just accumulated over time.
And with regard to any alternatives to chlorination, the two big ones that I see when I go looking out are UV and ozone. UV, it sounds like, can't be a primary decontamination method. And in any case, both of them have the problem that they're single point decontamination, that the chlorine persists throughout the system and gives you the decontamination throughout the entire system. So really, even if we wanted to use some other method in conjunction, is there anything other than?
No, not that really I think is as efficient as chlorination. That
That's
really
what I
is
thought
the
based on
industry standard, yeah.
the digging around that I'd looked a little bit.
Especially for a system of our size. I think, ozone or UV would work for a much smaller system, but not on a system of our size.
Okay. The other question I have deals with the funding for it. That it's, I don't remember in this case, it's a couple $100,000, I think, that we end up pulling out of the reserve or the surplus.
Yeah, I think the estimate was about 320,000 total. Yeah.
And that even spending that down, we still end up above the 365-day target that we keep for cash on hand.
Correct.
Just to ensure stability and safety in the fund. Is this the case where we have been collecting money with the intent of spending it on this equipment? Or is there some other reason that we have that extra hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting there above the 365-day?
Yeah, I can just speak quickly to that. We have been saving money in this fund, maybe not specifically for this project, but just in general saving money each year based on the depreciation amount. That did decrease in this current year's budget. We decreased the amount that we were saving, but still about $235,000 in this current budget year we're planning on saving for capital purchases. So that's one of the reasons for the excess funds.
I'd say the other thing that has also helped us is over the past 2 or 3 years, I think it's 2 years now, right? We've gotten $1 million grants to do some of these projects. And so while we were anticipating, right, we were saving money for those projects, we've been able to get grant money. Chris, I'm sorry, there's some feedback tonight for some reason. Chris and David are working right now with a rate study company. We're trying something and trying to do it internally instead of always having to go external. And so we've hired, or we've purchased Mayor Bill's favorite topic, software, to help us look internally to see if we can look at the water fund and determine, are we at where we need to be there? Because I think that's a long-term thing that we need. We were really waiting for the audit to be complete so that we had audited financial numbers, and we need to hit sewer and water and PI now. So
I do love to talk about government software.
Just as a looking forward thing, this is certainly not an immediate item and something that I'll talk with folks about going forward, but I would like to see more of a plan for, a capital plan for what, rather than we're just saving money for capital stuff. That, okay, we expect that over the next 10 years, these are the capital things we're going to need. We know that some amount of stuff is just going to break and we're going to have to replace, and so factor that in. But for big purchases, that just helps us, I think, be sure that we're not just stockpiling a bunch of money that we don't need to be holding on to. Okay, thank you.
Chris, do you remember off the top of your head when our last water capital plan and rate study was?
I want to say around 2021.
Okay, so it's about time for that anyway, Councilmember Courtney, about every 5 years. So thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
First of all, I love the fact that we have pure water. I'm thinking I'm going to start a water bottle company selling bottles of water, and I've got one chlorinated and one pure. Which one's going to sell? That and the fact that I have overchlorinated my hot tub far too many times, and it's not fun. I'm opposed to chlorination unless it's needed. And if it's needed, how could you be against something that's needed? But to me, that's the cutoff. It's got to get to that point where providing the water untreated is unsafe. And if we get to that point, we need to have the ability to do it. So I support this.
Okay. Looks like did you have something else, Councilmember Rice?
Yeah. I do. And I started to say this, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on several, Dr. Smith, first of all, but I think we all got the letter from Kathleen Roberts in our email. And I don't know if that should be read in because she goes through a lot of the studies and research, and she certainly doesn't want it to be, our water to be chlorinated. And I agree. I have a really hard time drinking purified water. So I understand why we're doing this, and it's good to fit it. But is that appropriate to put that into the minutes, or would you prefer not to?
Stephanie, can you tell us how it works when we get those resident emails?
Typically, I don't include anything unless it was read into the minutes or into the meeting here,
Okay.
or it was handed out at the meeting. Then it would be included at the back of the minutes.
So if in the future somebody wanted to print out copies of a resident email and bring them, then that would be recorded in the minutes and it would be attached as an exhibit.
Okay, correct. I should have done that.
And I think one
and then
thing, I'm sorry, Councilmember.
Go ahead. Well,
I was just going to say, we intend to, at a future, either the budget retreat or a future council meeting, depending on timing, have a full work session to talk about the chlorine issue itself. And I feel like I would love for Kathleen and anybody else at that time to come and, or to make comments ahead of time on that aspect so that they can be part of the minutes, certainly, and that it's not just council members who have that access to that information.
So, and I just have one last question, but so in an emergency, do we have, I always try to make sure, that I have a detached filter system in an emergency, but I'm just wondering if we have, what's your plan if one of the chlorination pumps fail or machinery fails? Do we have an extra? How hard is that to replace?
So both of these actually come with a redundant system. So there's two different tanks that they can pull from. It will be automated, so it automatically does. But if we really had an emergency situation even bigger than that, just having the ability to chlorinate at any of our wells, we could always switch to another source.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify. So what we're talking about tonight, or voting on, is the ability to basically make it available chlorination for wells 1 and 5, right?
Correct.
Because already 2, 3, and 4 are set up that way. So you just want the whole system with that ability. Well, we're not making a decision tonight to chlorinate all the water. I'm sure there'd be an open, transparent thing with the public and public hearing and a few things.
Yeah,
before we did
absolutely,
that.
you're correct.
Okay, unless we're having lots of contamination, just have to go ahead with it. But
And
we're
if
not,
that was the case, I'm sure we would at least inform the city council and our residents if we were in that situation.
Okay.
I agree with Councilmember Smith that we need to make sure we get the public input.
I'm ready for a motion. I move that City Council award the well chlorination project to Vancon Inc. in the amount of $513,700.
Second.
So that was a motion by Councilmember Rodella, a second by Councilmember Courtney. While they're voting, Chris, why don't we add a contingency to this when we do to everything else?
I'm sorry?
We don't add a contingency to this like we do to everything else.
We did add a contingency.
It's in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's why it's 513.
Gotcha. Five for five, let's see.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
Chris? So we have all these contingency funds all the time. It'd be interesting as a council member to know how often we use the full 10% or.
I bet 100%.
I haven't actually looked. There's certainly projects that I know we've used contingencies. There's projects where we've
Well,
had
I'm
to
sure
come
the
back and ask
majority
for
are,
more.
but it'd be nice to know if occasionally it comes underneath.
It does. Our slip landing project, we didn't use any of our contingency, and we didn't use even some of that portion of it that had funded some of the top hats. So that's one right off the top of my head where I know we came in under.
I'm sorry, didn't understand. Which project
The
was that?
slip lining, the sewer slip lining project.
Oh, okay. Great, because people ask me that once in a while, and I say, well, I don't know. So that's helpful. Okay.
And Stephanie, that was a 5-2 0. On to 4F, which is Mayor Pro Tem. I think we all know what that is. Somebody to fill in when I am unavailable. I'm not sure if we need any discussion or if anybody wants to make a motion or...
I'll make a motion. I move that City Council appoint Dr. Scott Smith to Mayor Pro Tem for 2025.
I'll second that.
Perfect. A motion by Councilmember Rodell.
2026, sorry. I was reading the thing there.
By Councilmember Rodella and a second by Councilmember Rice. So we can go ahead and vote on that. Dr. Smith, it's time for us to bring back City Ice Cream Day. I'm super excited about that. That's our thing.
The next time you're out of town, it'll happen.
No. Oh. Wow.
Stephanie,
you
put
do
that
it.
in the
Our
minutes.
thing.
Hold him to it.
No,
Like
I have
cookie
to
dough.
be. It's my thing. We're
can
going to
do
do
it.
it together.
We can do it.
Yes, 100%. We are on to expedited items. So this is Jay. Welcome to the party.
Open space. This was, we talked about it last week, but we had a little details that we wanted to tighten up. That was in your packet. I'm not allowed to ask you for any questions, so just go ahead.
Why is that?
Because it's an it's
expedited.
an expedited.
Oh my goodness.
Because we talked about it last time.
Do we have a proposed motion to bring up?
I motion that we talk about it. More.
Okay.
I know we have, but it's, maybe I have a...
Councilmember Rice, what would you like to?
So, never mind. I'm being ridiculed.
I'll do a motion.
So we have
And
two
just-
motions.
Yeah, there's two motions.
This
If-
is the current method, then there's the...
Yeah, and current or alternate.
Okay.
Councilwoman Rodella, were you going to make that motion?
Wait, what did we talk about
Pick your
last
flavor
week?
like it's ice cream.
Talked about changing it.
Well, so we're going to have to kind of
Yep,
clarify.
we're going to have to clarify.
So there's the lesser expensive one that is the traditional one we've done for...
The
six
current
years.
one-
Yeah. Okay,
Then
the
there's
alternate
the other
was the
one,
we
the
did,
alternate, yeah.
that we decided last week.
Right.
Okay, so I am going to do then, I move that City Council adopt the resolution designating the valuation of orphan properties for 2026, utilizing the alternate method for designating the value of orphan parcels for 2026, and adopt the orphan property disposal policy resolution.
I'll second that.
Can we have clarification exactly how much that is? Is it 582?
572.
Okay.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Rodella, and that was a second by Councilmember Courtney. Is that right? No.
Is Ron
Councilmember Campbell. I'm sorry, Stephanie. Okay, and we're all set. I'm faster than the software. Love that. Okay, and I think we're ready. And that is a 5-2-0. On to the closing out and dissolving of the open space special service district, which I feel like we've talked about 400 times, but I'm assured that that's incorrect and I'm overstating it.
It's 369.
Oh, that's what it was. Thank you. Kim's good on the numbers.
You may be correct. This is just putting a bow on all of it. We still have the entity known as the Highland City Open Space Special Service District. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any money, doesn't collect revenues, doesn't collect fees, doesn't use revenues or fees. So we just like to formally dissolve it so we don't have to keep track of that fund or do anything with it going forward. And so we will, if approved, we'll file the appropriate documentation with the Lieutenant Governor's office and close that out permanently.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to make that motion.
I would love that.
Okay. I move that the Highland City Council adopt the resolution dissolving the Highland City Open Space Special Service District and closing the associated open space fund.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilmember Smith with a second by Councilwoman Rodella, and ready for a vote. And that is also 5-0. Moving on to communication items. So this first item is from Councilmember Courtney, and what I'm hoping that we can get from this one is him kind of present the issue and what he sees, and then see if we can get consensus about whether or not to bring it back as an action item. So I'll let Councilmember Courtney take it.
Do you have those? There you go. First of all, one of the council members pointed out that our current RP zone has different signage rules than the PO zone. And one implication of that is that there are only 2 monument signs allowed here on the corner where we're seeing on Alpine and SR92, the southeast corner. What I'm showing right here is the there is a no signage allowed area close to the intersection under the current RP rules. There are only 2 signs permitted, and they have to have at least 130 feet between them. And the max sign size is 42 square feet. The red rectangles you see in the lower left and the upper right are the existing monument signs. There is an additional sign, which is the small red square that we see on the left. And there are 3 temporary signs on the property right now that are the teal squares. And if you switch to the next, this is looking at the property with applying the PO zone rules for signage. The PO zone standards require no signs within 300 feet from the intersection of SR92. And they would allow 3 signs in this area because you can have 1 sign for each building that has at least 130 feet of frontage. But the signs have to have 150 feet of spacing, and the allowed signs are somewhat smaller. If we just went with the PO zone standards here, we still would not allow any additional signs because of that large 300-foot setback from the intersection. If you'd hit the next one, I put together another look, which is basically allowing some of the less stringent requirements from both zones, keeping the 100-foot intersection setback from the current RP zone, but allowing the 1 sign per building from the PO zone, and keeping 130-foot spacing requirement there. And we can see that that does allow some spots there toward the upper left that are marked in green where an additional sign would be permitted. This is a fairly high-level overview of what the signage requirements are. There are some other details in there, but when we're talking about monument signs, this basically hits the things. I think to me, when we have 3 buildings here, it makes sense to allow a third.
That's what I was going to say. So
sign.
basically, we have 3 buildings and we're only allowed 2 signs.
Monument signs, yes.
Monument signs. So I think what we need to know is if there is any interest in bringing this back as an action item and discussion and conversation.
Yes.
Yes. We need to address it and have consistency.
Yeah. Okay. So I have 3 yeses. Did you have a question?
Well, I'm just going to make a comment. So, I've always thought I didn't have any conflicts of interest in this, but
it's been a rough year, huh?
Yeah, it's been a rough year so far.
So the reason I didn't understand this, I've been on the council for a while, I didn't realize we just had 2 monument signs here. So the problem with that large building back up there, and they've had a really hard time maintaining tenants, and one of it's the signage issue. And, you know, for our clinic, Premier, we're a big corporation. I'm not on the executive committee. I'm not on the building board. But the CEO approached me and said, hey, we would really like to buy at least part of that building and have a satellite clinic there, which I would support. But at the same time, they came back and said, but, you know, when you're a clinic, you've got to have signage. And so Rob gave a really wonderful legal opinion and kind of brought up the issues and different things. I passed it on. But, you know, if this comes to a vote, and I don't know if the clinic's still even interested in this building, but if it is, then I would recuse myself again. But I do think we need to sometimes ask ourselves why some of our professional office buildings and things don't have tenants. And if it's some easy fix by allowing another monument sign. So across the street, when it used to be Hart's, now it's On the Go, they actually approached the council and asked for a bigger sign for their building, and we approved that some years ago. And so there we do have a precedent for doing this. Also, we're doing a similar thing for Highland Mains. And so we may, just an overall thing, we've got all these different zones, and it would be nice to kind of course, this would be more of a PO zone, I guess, but it'd be nice to maybe kind of, what should we say, coordinate the different codes for each of these zones a little more, so we don't have about 6 different setups. Because as the city developed, of course it made sense. These different areas came in and the councils, but it'd be nice to make it all more consistent. So that's just my comment.
Okay. I agree, and it looks like that we have council members Rodelis, Smith, Courtney, and Campbell at least, who are interested in considering this. So I think that's enough to move it to a future agenda item. As far as what Councilmember Smith said, I agree about addressing this sign code. So Aaron, I would like to see maybe this added to your spreadsheet of lists and priorities so that we can kind of figure out where this lands, because I do think it should be addressed.
I do have a comment or
Perfect.
question. Do you mind?
No, I don't mind. I'm so low-key.
So this is the bank, right? I'm not opposed to
yeah, the upper left corner is the bank.
But if I remember correctly, when I sat on the planning commission, let me go back. So these red ones are the monuments, right? Those red. I'm seeking
the 2 red rectangles.
The rectangles.
Non-square rectangles are monument signs.
Okay, and what is this one?
It's a really bizarre little sign that sticks up, and it's like maybe 18 by 18. It's like a foot by foot that talks about where to turn to get to the ATM in the bank, and it stands no place near anywhere where you can turn.
I didn't even consider that a sign. I guess that's why I question. I know what you're talking about, but as I recall, my planning commission days, the reason we did that was because there was a huge sign by the bank.
The billboard.
That big billboard, and it is not ours, as I recall.
It was a Reagan sign, but it's gone.
It is gone. For good.
It's been gone for about 10 years now.
Okay, I would.
But that was a controversy because there was a big billboard there.
Yeah.
And then when Wells Fargo came in, I don't know, it's been 10 years or more since it's been gone, maybe 15.
No, I'd be interested in bringing it back too, especially since that's gone. I thought, no, that's gone, but you drive by it every day, and then I go, I don't remember what's there.
Perfect. On to the fire station driveway. Talk about something we've talked about more than once. Let's do it.
Yeah, so we finally got an agreement back from Rocky Mountain Power about a month ago. But part of that contract was a fee of about $35,000 to relocate that cabinet. So trying to do some due diligence, I went to our city attorney and said, do we have a copy of the franchise agreement? And he looked through it and found that it actually said that Rocky Mountain Power is required to move their infrastructure if it is within the city way at no cost to the city, and they will also do so within 2 weeks of being notified. So we pointed that out to Rocky Mountain Power. They must have read 2 years, I don't know. So we've gone back to Rocky Mountain, and they kind of disagreed with our assessment of what our franchise agreement is. But I think Rob and I met with them earlier today, and when it comes right down to it, they admitted, yeah, this is our responsibility to relocate. This should have been placed in the public utility easement, which would have then been the city's responsibility to pay for. It wasn't. They felt a little bit like it was our contractors who had done the site work that put it in the wrong place when the fire station was built. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's their responsibility to move, and they will do so. They did have an ask of us. They're willing to cover their costs, but they did ask if we could do the trenching and put the conduits in the ground, because they would have to contract that out to someone else. I think, we got a new backhoe last council meeting. We could probably do that work. If it helps to facilitate it and get it done quicker, I'm all for that. But I also told them I will be reporting to the council, and we'll get any feedback from them. It seems a little bit reasonable, but we really don't have to either. We can tell them, no, it's your job, and we want it relocated by the end of the month.
So can the mayor run the backhoe?
As long as I'm not too close, we'll do some training.
That is not fair, and just you wait until you see what I have planned for the budget retreat. Yeah, just wait and see.
They do have like a backhoe rodeos,
Just wait and see.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, I feel like everybody should be excited.
On Rocky Mountain Power in 11200, there's that cul-de-sac road that's gone in, and we put a sidewalk, a brand new sidewalk the developer did, right where a telephone pole's coming out of the middle. Has that been resolved?
I know it's something that we've been working on. I think the telephone pole is gone now.
I haven't been by there, so I just wondered if
I
you
haven't been
knew.
either, but I think that's
11200.
It's a hole now. It's part of our traffic calming.
So, let me ask a quick question.
No,
so,
it's in the middle of a brand
we've been
new
talking about the funding for this driveway for a while, but this has been the roadblock. How much of our costs gone up while we've had to wait?
I think that's a good question that I was hoping to have an answer for you tonight. I did talk with the contractor. He's still working on that number. I should have a number tomorrow. But
if our costs have gone up quite a bit, I think we need to really protest.
I agree.
I think that's a
fair.
great point.
Yeah.
What does the timeline look like for poor Chief to get his driveway?
I think that we should have this equipment moved by the end of the month, and then we'll get our contractor out there and have them start working.
Perfect.
My question with the trenching is, I know that oftentimes when we're doing significant construction, we contract it out. Are there utility lines or anything near there? And do we have the expertise in-house to be confident that?
I feel pretty good about it. We're not
Okay.
moving it too terribly far. I think we should be fine with it, and I will back up a little bit and say that they offered to also supply the conduits that we would install with it. So I think we should be good. I mean, it's a good question. I honestly, I'm not sure what else might be out there. Possibly some fiber that we'd have to worry about, but.
A gas line?
Yeah, I think we'll be in front of the gas line, so.
Does anybody else have a feeling about the trenching and whether or not we should pay for that or not?
I am concerned. I'm going to go with Councilman Courtney on this. Not that you don't, I think staff is great, but I don't want anybody getting hurt in an effort to save a buck either. I mean, end of comment.
So Councilmember Courtney, was your opinion then that we should not do the trenching because of that
It
concern?
was really
or just wanting
just
to
a
address
question
the
about
concern?
it. I guess where I come down is that I'm okay with us doing the trenching, partly because that's probably going to speed up the process. And at this point, I'm very much in favor of speeding up the process. But if it turns out that as you take a look at it, there are other utilities or conduits or whatever, and we're worried about risk of it, then I'm perfectly good with pushing that back on them. And
Okay. We can take a look at it. Our crews routinely will replace
What do you
fire
wanna do?
hydrants and things like that are usually behind the walk, where they still have to worry about fiber and other utility lines, gas lines, electrical lines. So I feel pretty good about their abilities.
Okay.
I just say whatever staff recommends.
And Councilmember Campbell,
I don't have any comment.
what would you prefer?
What's that?
What would you prefer? Would you prefer that we do the trenching or?
Yes. The status quo, just,
So-
I don't have the same concern that Doug does.
So I'm not sure what you heard. I'm not sure.
I think, probably what I heard was that the staff go out and actually look at it and make sure we feel comfortable that we can move it without damaging or injuring anybody or anything. And if that's the case, then we go ahead and make that offer. If we have any concerns about it, then we go back to Rocky Mountain and say it's on you.
And I agree with Councilmember Smith. If our costs have increased substantially, then that's on them.
And we can take that back as well.
And as long as the mayor is not driving the backhoe, I think we're good.
No, I support the backhoe. The mayor's wanted to do this for years.
Thank you.
And while we're talking about increased costs.
No, we're not
to
talking about
push them
increased
about
costs.
that,
We're talking about me driving the backhoe. Where I understood we were
that
at.
I think we have probably some increased costs in fire equipment. That if we're talking about recovering increased costs, we talk about that with them also.
Okay, we are ready to move on to our work session, and I believe we have Mr. Sanborn here, because I can't imagine anybody else hanging out to this point. So we would love to hear, I assume it's going to be a presentation, Erin?
Yeah, so we'll actually have Jay start us off. And kind of, as I was talking with this, with some council members, I realized that it's been a minute since we've adopted this, and I am going to excuse the chiefs at the point we felt like they didn't need to be here anymore. So I need to be the favorite now, chiefs. So I'm going to have Jay give some background information on this, because it's been a minute since we've adopted this and wanted to make sure that everybody understood what we were talking about. I do anticipate this being about being a minute of a conversation, Mayor Bill, so I didn't know if you wanted to take a break or if we just want to dive right into it. We do have a closed session. We do anticipate a closed session after this as well.
I mean, I'm down to just jump in.
Okay, great.
So let's go ahead with our presentation, and then afterwards, I think Erin's right, we'll have questions and comments and all kinds of stuff.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to start out by just giving you a quick overview of the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund. It was established in December of 2017 by Resolution 2017-32. According to that resolution, it was designed to ensure the long-term care and maintenance of the cemetery. 25% of future capital costs and 10% of ongoing maintenance costs will be subsidized by the general fund. That is as dictated in this resolution. And you'll note that in the model that Zion's Public Finance has developed, this is incorporated into their calculations. After lot sales end, only interest from the fund's corpus, although the word we are using is endowment because we don't like using the word corpus in relation to the cemetery. That's weird.
I kind of agree with Rob. I do like using that word, but okay.
So the fund's endowment, like we use with, libraries and other things, will be used for cemetery maintenance and capital costs, with any shortfall covered by the general fund. Cemetery plot fees increase by approximately 3% annually for inflation, and that is something that we as staff work into our fee schedule every year. So we are keeping up on that. It also stipulates that burial fees will be adjusted as needed to cover service costs, and that's something that we will talk about tonight in Zion Public Finance's analysis. I would like to put you at ease, I guess. The model shows that building the endowment is feasible and reasonable. And with that said, I will turn it over to Erin. Let me bring up the...
Perfect. Thanks for coming. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Glad to be here with you guys.
If you want to tap dance for a little bit while I get your presentation up, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll just introduce myself, Aaron Sanborn with Zion's Public Finance. I've been with our firm now for about 3 years. Prior to that, I actually worked with Chris and David up at Eagle Mountain City. And so it's a little bit of a happy reunion in a council meeting. So it's great to be with you discussing this. And really, as it was talked about, this is one of those unique funds where eventually your revenue sources dry up. Thank you. Where you've sold all your plots, there's no more openings and closings, and so, but you still have ongoing costs needed to meet the ongoing expenses that are experienced, still to maintain the cemetery as a place where families and individuals can gather. So our study really is hoping to look at the long-term sustainability of this fund to make sure that there is sufficient revenue in interest accruing annually to do that. Obviously, knowing that those sources of revenue, the plot sales are the main source of that revenue. But also looking at it not just here in this city, but kind of what is being experienced in other cities in the area as far as their costs. Not that necessarily just because one city charges one thing, you want to do that, but it is helpful to compare across different cities. And then looking at that perpetual care fund to figure out what is needed in order to make sure it is sustaining. Background on this, and this is data as of 2024. We're still working to finalize 2025 data to build into the model, but as of 2024, there were a little over 4,000 plots sold at the cemetery, with a little over 6,000 plots remaining, for a total of 10,221 plots. The model assumes that there were around 300 plots sold in 2025, and based on that growth rate, you would see by 2040, all the plots would be sold in the cemetery. You would still experience openings and closings until probably about 2070, but at that point, those would be finished as well. So you can see kind of based on the growth that that has been experienced in the past, in the burial plot sales, you can see steadily increases, and then obviously in 2040, you do see that reduction where those are just the final remaining lots being sold. And it does assume that the city will continue to experience a pretty similar mix as far as the resident and non-resident plot sales for the model. Currently, Highland has on the lower end of some of the comparable cities as far as the plot sales prices. You can see that Pleasant Grove and Lehigh are both at $1,000 for residents, and Highland coming in third at $1,283. The average for the group that we analyzed was $1,421 for the resident plot sales. Again, showing kind of where the city is, a little bit below the average currently for that lot price, for the plot price. Same thing for the non-resident, although you are a little bit lower on the list currently with those prices. Openings and closings are obviously another source of the revenue for this. The average for the group was $680, with Highland being at $600 for resident on the weekday openings and closings. Kind of smack dab the middle, Pony Express Memorial has the lowest at $300, and up in Salt Lake City, the highest at over $1,000 for the opening and closing on the weekdays. So looking at our model, everything assumes that some of those initial costs for the cemetery are going to be repaid. And we modeled different scenarios on how that would look, whether we're just going to refund the general fund for the land costs, which was about $270,000 remaining. Scenario 2 looks at refunding all the remaining costs that are there, a little bit under $900,000. Scenario 3, looking at what would it take if the general fund was not paid back by the cemetery fund. But then also a scenario where we looked at if you still paid off all the costs, but kept the fees at where the average is currently. As a spoiler, all the scenarios do look at increasing the fees to pay for that, but that scenario would set it to the average currently. And then, as Jim mentioned, there is that ongoing contribution from the general fund in perpetuity to pay for both the operating and capital costs.
On scenarios 1 and 2, those dollar amounts that you list, is that the full amount or is that the 75% amount?
That should be the 75% amount.
Okay.
If I remember the model correctly.
Okay.
So, we'll start off first on the needs of the endowment. We pulled this out 50 years, and in 2075, the cemetery will have, expected expenses of $881,417. The general fund contributing about $96,000 in that year. So the interest that is needed to be earned in order to pay for those expenses is $785,215, which requires an endowment of a little over $26 million. Now that number looks potentially really scary. It's a big number. Present value, that's around $6 million, which is still, potentially a scary number to look at. But one thing we want to just keep in mind, if we look back 50 years, what were prices like? I would love to have the average home price be $35,000. I think that would solve a lot of the housing issues we are experiencing here in Utah. This is what you're seeing, where prices 50 years ago were a lot different than what we're experiencing now due to inflation, due to the increases in prices. That's what you're experiencing. So even though $26 million is what's needed for the endowment fund in order to be sustainable in the future, because of the power of compound interest with what you're saving, as well as increases in inflation over the years, that number really isn't as big as perhaps it looks initially. So the first scenario, again, assuming that the general fund will be repaid just for the land costs that are outstanding, it would require an immediate increase of 15% to all the rates, to the burial plots, but also to the opening and closing costs. And then annual increases thereafter are 3.5% in order to keep up with the inflation. In 2027, that fee for a resident plot would be $1,475, which is 104% of the current average of that group. And this one does meet the threshold where it would have the ability to produce enough interest based off the endowment need of $26.2 million. Scenario 2, looking again, it has an increase a little bit larger. This one would look at repaying all of the costs to the general fund. And this would require an increase of 18.5% initially, and then again, the same 3.5% increase thereafter. The 2027 fee for a resident plot would be $1,520, which is 107% of the current average for the group. And then again, the endowment is able to reach what is needed in order to be self-sustaining. Option number 3, again, if we are looking at not repaying the general fund any of the remaining amount, it requires a little bit of less of an increase initially, about 13.5%, with those 3.5% increases afterwards. This one is only 102% of the average, or $1,456. And then a little bit of a broken record, but once again, this does have enough interest accrued and in order to meet the needs of the ongoing expenses. And then finally, the fourth scenario, where we're looking at a situation where maybe it's going to repay all the costs, but we really want to make sure we're keeping the plot sales or that fee to a lower amount. It would require, increasing it, to $1,421, and still increases. But you'll notice that in 2075, the endowment only reaches $14.6 million instead of $26.2 million. So there is a gap that is needed. It would generate about $450,000 annually in the interest, when it would require $785,000 of interest. So there is a gap of $335,000 that would need to come from the general fund or other revenue sources in order to make up the difference in what you are experiencing in the needs there. So this is just showing everything side by side. So these are the 4 scenarios that we worked through. Of the 4, 3 of them obviously have the ability to pay for what is needed in the annual expenses for the cemetery, just based off of the endowment fund. Whereas scenario 4 does require significantly more contribution in the future from the general fund in order to make sure that the cemetery is still able to be maintained in the way that it is projected in that year. With that, I'm happy to answer questions on the different scenarios and kind of what that looks like.
I just had one question. I didn't catch. What sort of interest rate are you averaging out?
So this is based off of an assumed 3% interest rate. And obviously, if it is significantly higher as what the city could be getting, the amount is needed would be a lot less. We can play around with different interest rates and what you might see. 3% is what we, on average have used in a lot of our models, just to be on the conservative side of what we would expect to see in the future.
I mean, we haven't had a 3% interest rate for a while. I mean, it's, a few years, but okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the difference between scenario 2 and scenario 3. I see a reduction here, but the outcome seems to be the same. So what am I missing? Repay all costs and then no repayment.
Yeah, so scenario 2 is where the cemetery fund would repay the general fund for the outstanding costs, and so
got it.
Therefore,
okay.
It would need to raise the rates higher in order to make up that difference in revenue.
Got it.
Yep.
To repay back. Got
exactly. Yeah.
What other questions?
Could I give just a little bit of context with
Sure.
the repayment? So currently our practice is that any surplus in the cemetery fund, the next year we would repay the general fund with all of that surplus. So annually that's been anywhere from 80,000 to 130,000. I believe in the model it kind of spreads it out, so it would be smaller incremental repayments. So the general fund would get paid back slower but fully.
How much is in there now? Do you know?
In the cemetery fund? Yeah, the current balance is about 137,000.
That's in our book. That's in our book.
Yep.
Sorry. I could have looked that up.
Were you audited by the auditor, or what audit do you go through with this fund, the management of this fund?
We're using the number.
I didn't see it in our current audit that we just went through.
Yeah, I think most of the financial the amounts were based on the prior fiscal year amounts, so we can update the model with the current.
Yeah, I'm not referring to the modeling. I'm talking. You're managing this fund now, right? Zions.
Don't know.
No.
This
No.
is just a study.
Oh, gotcha.
No, just the study.
All right, just the study.
Yeah, the
I'm
cemetery
sorry.
fund is included in the audited statements that you have there in front of you. If you look on
I
page...
couldn't find them.
Yeah, they're in the supplementary information because it's not a major governmental fund. It's considered a non-major.
Got it. Okay,
So page
all right.
49 is the page you
I'm
want to
way
look
off
at.
base here. Thank you.
Yep, you're good.
So the question I have, and this is probably more for staff, because I can't remember this, but when the cemetery perpetual fund was set up, was the discussion at that particular time that everything would be paid back to the general fund, or was it always felt like the general fund would be helping with the costs? Because I mean, we're seeing different scenarios here, but I'm just wondering what the original intention
So
was.
essentially, scenario 1 is status quo. It's based on the resolution that council adopted back in 2017 as a part
I wasn't
of.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As a part of this refresh to our fund study, we realized scenario 2 was an option. We honestly thought scenario 1 captured all of the costs that other funds had contributed, but David found that, oh no, back years ago, the Parks Capital Fund contributed for all of the landscaping to make the cemetery the cemetery. So the general fund bought the land, but the Parks Capital Fund made the cemetery a cemetery. And so we said, well, let's look at scenario 2 as an option. To see what, if we were to start repaying the Parks Capital as well, could we still build up the endowment that we needed? And then scenario 3, I mean, we wanted to give the council broad ideas, right? So scenario 3 would be, let's just, raise the fees the minimum we have to still create that endowment, but not pay back the other funds, which will ultimately have an impact, especially on the general fund, because we've been not counting on that revenue, we've been budgeting for that revenue for some time. And then scenario 4, right, is still the repayment of everything, but just not raising the fees as much as you would need to in scenario 2, if that makes sense.
So my understanding is probably staff is liking scenario 2.
Scenario 2 gives you the most flexibility with the money in the cemetery, well, in your other funds, while still creating an endowment in the cemetery needed to maintain it in the long term. So scenario 2 will help your general fund and it will help your parks capital fund. Perfect.
So this is kind of a question for Stephanie as well as you. So we know when the cemetery was created, there were some people that came in and bought multiple lots. I think our former mayor has 30 lots. So that's kind of an investment.
3%.
So if you sell those lots back, do you get the full fee?
That is correct. If someone comes in today and asks to purchase or to sell a plot back to the city, I give that to them at the going rate.
Do we have any idea how many people have done that? Because that affects your long term.
I would have to go back and look at my records to see how many people have bought those or have came back and sold those back to the city. It doesn't happen very often, to be honest. I don't see a lot of people selling them back. So
they mainly maybe
So
gift them to some other
Can
family
I insert
members.
something here? So American Fork Cemetery, a few years ago, I sold one back to them, and they would only give me what I paid for it. They would not give me the going rate.
When did you sell that back, Councilmember Rice?
2016.
Okay.
Okay.
I was
So
going to
it's
say.
been 10 years, and
Yeah.
maybe that's changed, but I just want you to know. And are we going to work on this at retreat, Madam Mayor? Or can I express some concerns here?
No, please. This is where this is a work session. It's intended to be a lot of conversation.
And I think I've asked this of, Aaron or Stephanie, but, we're really low on opening and closing a grave. Just went through this, and I realized that it's in the state of Idaho where I just buried my mom. But in comparison, we're really low, and I think we're really low on plot prices as well. So I don't raise prices too much. You won't see me support that, but I think we're low, and I think we need to bring it up. That is a beautiful cemetery. I have a husband that's buried there, and I love it. This is one of our only money-making things that we have. And in a number of years, a few years from now, we're going to be done. And I don't want to be where American Fork Cemetery was, where they were. Well, we don't need to get into that, but they were taking out roads to put in plots, and then, trying to keep their heads kind of above water there for a while. I don't know where they're at this time. But I want to know what the worst case scenario is to not repay. I mean, I understand that staff is saying scenario 2. Is that right? Am I right on that? Is that what they just said? You said, Kim. But what is the worst case scenario if we have no repayment? Because I am leaning that way. Any thoughts?
The worst case scenario, it ultimately just means that the money that we were budgeted to come into the general fund and had anticipated for the next few years will not be there. And so those funds would need to be made up in other ways, right? You cut services in the general fund. Either we cut services or raise taxes or the little bit of increase that we expect from property growth and sales growth would be swallowed up basically, and we wouldn't, it would be allocated to making up this difference basically.
So if we raise prices on it, and this is hard for me to say, but I just believe that we should, if they come back in to resell the property, or say they don't want the grave anymore, that it should be returned to them at what they paid. I do not feel that something like this should be an investment. I don't. I think it's inappropriate. And again, I think we need to raise our opening closing fees on that, and maybe even the fee on the plot sales, which is really hard for me to say because I've buried too many people in the last couple of years. But explain to me, so one more time on repay all costs, or scenario 2, or just one more time. I know you did it and I was listening, but just give it to me one more time.
So scenario 2 would look at repaying the cost that the general fund has already essentially not gifted, but incurred in order to develop the cemetery. And so the cemetery would pay back all those costs in full, so that the general fund departments are made whole for their contributions. And then the cemetery would need to raise the rates in order to make sure that that loss of revenue essentially is accounted for.
So if I remember the numbers correctly, that would be repaying the general fund about $270,000 for the land cost, and repaying the parks capital about $600,000
And so
for the landscaping cost.
How many years more are we going to do that, to repay?
Aaron's pinch hitting. He wasn't the main person on the study, but our main person wasn't here.
I can look back at our model.
I think I was told
Couldn't
3
be here.
years, because I've discussed this before, but I just,
Although I think for the study, it sounded like the plan was to decrease the amount per year and spread that out over
That was
more
my
years.
understanding from
So-
when I reviewed the model a while ago. I don't know if that's changed, Aaron, but
So
it wasn't extrapolated for the entire length of the model, but there was a certain period that it was.
so we're kind of refinancing that, sort of. Is that right? Okay.
Changing the calculation of how we do it.
Can I piggyback off Liz's question? What percentage of our plots are sold to resident versus non-resident? Because I almost wonder if we should charge non-residents quite a bit more than we charge residents,
That's
right?
obviously
Because
what's happening in Pleasant Grove.
we're paying our taxes and into the general fund. So what percentage? Any idea?
So I have the numbers here. So in 2024, it looked like there were a total of 254 sales. 176 were for residents and 78 were for non-residents.
It's like 65%-ish.
Yeah, around that.
I think that's something to consider, is raising the rate more for non.
Oh, I would agree with that, more for
Residents.
non, because American Fork did that.
I am all for that, and I think that absolutely makes sense, Council. One thing we would very much encourage you to do, if you choose to do that, is right now we allow transfers from non-residents to residents, and so a lot of people try to find someone they know who lives in Highland to buy it for them at that rate, and that, I think that would absolutely increase if you increase that gap even more. And what that causes, staff's able to do the paperwork. It's not that time consuming. I mean, it probably takes an hour of Stephanie's time, right, to destroy, well, I don't know how she destroys a certificate, but basically moves it into another person's name. But what we're really concerned about that is the confusion that could potentially cause in the future, right? Because especially if they don't do the transfer, right? So if they say, I bought these plots, well, actually it's in this person's name, and they could have come in and sold the plots, or they could decide, well, you don't get to bury who you want in there. And we have not, like, it's a private party transaction that we could potentially get in the middle of in a very hard time anyway for a family.
So 2 things about that. I remember when we had this discussion before, we also talked about like resident versus non-resident. So what if you grew up and lived in Highland and then you got moved to a care center or something, so you weren't in Highland? So we talked about that. But you already have that problem because we already have different rates. You're just saying it would be a bigger deal if there was more disparity?
I think more people would be motivated to try to, if the non-resident rate was significantly higher than the resident rate, more people would be motivated to try to find somebody who lives in Highland to buy it for them. And then if they don't go through the transfer process, then we create an issue where it's the person who lives outside of Highland thinks they own it, but actually the person who lives in Highland owns it, and so they could end up in a feud that the cemetery gets in the middle of, unfortunately.
So I need to address this a little bit, because American Fork Cemetery, when I purchased 2 plots there, and one plot was sold back for the price of which I purchased it for many years later. But I had to sign an agreement that I would not sell it to a third party. It's kind of like subletting. I'm not trying to make light of this, but it's kind of like subletting, and it removed the city's responsibility from getting in between, just like what Aaron's talking about. So, and I can't, you know, and it's not that hard to look up an obituary or have a death certificate of their last place of residence and wherever that is. But I will tell you that I had just barely moved from American Fork, had 2 plots in American Fork, moved from American Fork to Highland, and they still charged me the out-of-city rate, so, which I'm not, that's fine, but it's you know, that's fine. Those were their rules. But I think that we need to, you know, Rob's a genius. He can come up with a statement that says you will not sell this to a third party. You know, it has to come back to the city if it's going to be sold.
And, you know, we actually already do that, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, and she can probably speak better to this and the issue that we have between residents and non-residents.
I was just going to say, I would love to hear Stephanie's perspective, because I think the cemetery is one of the most important things we do.
Thank you. I actually love the cemetery so much. It makes me really happy to be able to visit with families at this time when they need a lot of help. So I will tell you that we do have some protections written in to what you said about that. On the burial right purchase agreement, I just barely pulled this up. It does say that it is non-transferable. So we have identified in our code that we can transfer, but it's only to a family member, an heir. So we do have some protections in that not everyone's going to be able to purchase plots for everyone and then just transfer them to everyone. It has to be a family member. Now, with that being said, when someone comes in and purchases a plot and then they come back to me and say, I'm going to transfer this to my sister and she lives in Kansas, and this does happen, I don't know that the person she's transferring to is actually her sister. I have no way of knowing that. And so I am having to take that person, I'm having to take them at their word. So where we do have some protection that we say we only transfer to family members, that could be misused and we wouldn't know it. We do also have in here that the burial right may only be sold back to the city, only who agreed, and we do say in here though that we do agree to purchase it back at the present value for the burial right. So if we wanted to change that, we would need to update our application on that. You know, I know that families like to take advantage of that resident rate, but like I say, there are some protections that we only transfer to family members. But I think to Aaron's point, if we make that discrepancy even bigger between the resident and the non-resident rate, you might find even more people trying to work that angle a little bit more, and it might become even more tricky. The whole idea, when I sit there, I'm like, I just want the next person who's sitting in my chair to be able to understand what has happened, and so when that family member comes in, they can handle that cemetery transaction without a lot of issues, because it is a tender time.
Stephanie,
can you go back to the slide of what that difference is currently?
Stephanie, how would we get rid of the problem? Either not just have one fee, whether you're resident or non-resident, or just not allow transfers? Like what would be the solution to try to not create this from happening?
So I did work in American Fork prior to working here, and I did work the cemetery. So I know at that point they did away with the resident and the non-resident rate because they were seeing so many problems with their records. They have since gone back to a resident and non-resident rate, probably when they opened up their new section, because it does make sense, you know, that residents are paying taxes. So I see that angle on it. You know, it's really up to council whether you want to do just a single rate for everyone. That takes away all of the transferring type thing between trying to get in and do, you know, trying to get the resident rate and trying to get that around that, you know, or doing away with transfers altogether. We could do that. And then they would just have, if someone had a plot that they didn't want to use anymore, or they wanted to transfer it to a family member, they would simply sell it back to the city, and we would turn around and sell it back to that person.
And
So-
I'm not sure how that, you're going to have to do a little more explaining on that, because I guess this is my conflict of interest. Because I purchased 9, right? A long time ago, way before I was on the council or planning commission. And they are designed for my son and their wife. And that's considered a transfer, correct? Even if it's in my will.
Well, it fits under the.
Well, they're in your name, is that correct?
Yes.
So we're not transferring anything to anyone until you come in and say to me.
They're out of city residence.
Right, right. But we don't care who, at the time of the burial prices are the same for everyone unless we decide to change that. So the service itself is the same for everyone, regardless of their residency. It's only the plot that is different. So you have a non-resident and a resident rate for the plot. All the services are the same.
But I guess to Councilmember Rice's point, if she passes before any of her children, and they're still in her name, what happens at that point, right? If she has a will, right, that spells that out, we can make that change, but.
Right. So yeah, if you have, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, that if you have plots, 9 plots, like you said, and if they're in just your name, then, and you, let's say you're deceased, then someone's going to have to come in and prove to me that they are the legal heir and have been given the right to administer those plots.
So it is a willed.
So it's either a will or a trust
Yeah.
that I'm going to be looking for.
Okay.
Language. In the study, in the projections, I only saw the increase in the resident fee. Did you have an increase in the same percentage?
Yeah, it's
You
the
just didn't
same
list it.
percentage. Yeah, we just listed the resident for just to show.
Because that's the one we're obviously most interested in,
Yeah, but
and I appreciate that.
It would
But-
increase the same across the board.
Yeah, I think the one thing to consider here, and is it coincidental that the model really comes back to the average? The recommended ends is 1421, and I believe it was 1421 on that first scenario. When we look at this, and we look at the increases, realizing that we're looking at this as it is right now, and the comparisons of where 1421 is going to fit with everybody else, we say it's going to be average. However, I guarantee all these other cities are in the process of increasing their fees. So the increase is not going to be quite as much compared to other cities as we might think of it as just looking at this data right now, because this data is a point in time. In a year from now, I guarantee all these are going to go up, and the amount that we go up probably is not going to be as, I think this average will go up quite a bit. So anyway, I support scenario 2. I like scenario 2. I believe we should repay the fund. I would like to see any money that we put into this in the future be considered a loan. It's a loan to this endowment, and it will be paid back.
Mayor, I have some information to
Love it.
provide. So to answer some questions that have been brought up, Councilmember Smith, you had a question about what was the intent of the council at the time that the Perpetual Care Fund was established.
Back in 2017, because
Yes, so I brought up the minutes, and so the pertinent part, I won't read the whole thing, but it says, moving forward, 75% of the capital costs of the general fund that were originally spent on land purchase and improvements would be repaid from the Perpetual Care Fund back to the general fund. That repayment would only occur in years when the revenues exceed the expenses and staff expected full repayment by 2026. We're not there. And then according to the model, there were some questions about what does the model show. For full repayment, and Aaron, I think I'm reading this right, it will take about 10 years at about $90,000 to pay back the full fund. That's what the full payment. There was also the scenario with just land, and that is a 5-year payment horizon at about $55,000. So that, just to answer questions that you all had, or some of you had, about the repayment to the general fund and what that would look like, there you go.
I'm not, first of all, apologies for, I have talked about the cemetery fund study, I know, with Aaron a couple of times, and I did not realize, or I had forgotten, that the plan going forward is for the general fund to be paying 25% of the cemetery capital costs and 10% of the cemetery operating costs. I'm not particularly fond of any of these options because I don't like that. I would prefer for the cemetery to cover at least its operating costs out of the corpus, out of the interest on the corpus. I don't know if there's anyone else who is interested in that. I don't know how much would be involved in working another set of numbers, but
honestly, as we looked at these, we're like, we could come up with limitless scenarios. So we're going to stick with just, okay, status quo on that. And let me just give you some background as to why that was made, but absolutely the council could change their mind on that. So the thought was, generally the cemetery provides the most benefit to those who have plots there or who have family members there, and so it should pay the bulk of it. However, there is general benefit to the city at large for having a cemetery, right? Any of you who drive by in the early morning hours will see walkers. They use it as a safe place to walk, right? And it's just, it is a beautiful cemetery, right? There's something good. And so the thought process of the council at the time is the cemetery should mostly pay for itself, but the city at large should pay a little bit. So that's why we came up with the numbers, but absolutely there could be a scenario where the cemetery fully pays for itself. It just, of course, would increase the corpus need, and thus, depending on council's preference, endowment need, and thus increase the need for how quickly we would need to raise rates in the cemetery.
Well, and as we raise it just seems more, what we just heard, so it'll take 10 years at $90,000 to pay it back. And we have $137,000 currently in that fund, correct?
That was roughly right.
So I don't want to get down the road when all of us are long gone and suddenly we have a problem where the cemetery is no longer even sustainable. And that's, so what is fair? I understand to pay it back, I get it. But, and I understand what Stephanie is saying, but I believe that our rates, if you want to have them the same, they should be $1,700 to $1,800 per plot, period. And I don't know if I'm going to budge on that. I'm closer to $1,800 on it, just because I know what I have paid in the past. But I'm going to just add one little side note here. When I sold it back to American Fork, they 1099 me for the same amount I bought it for. I was going, huh? And I had to claim it on my tax. Anyway, never mind. It's just.
I'm going to have to think more about this. I would agree with Ron and lean towards scenario 2. I think we need to charge more in different things. I do disagree with Liz. I can see your argument about if you sell them back, you got to get the same cost you paid for them, but that doesn't take into account inflation. And so you're actually selling them back for less than you really paid for it. Yeah. And so I think, the fact that they're going up 3% a year, that's really just inflation. And so I kind of would disagree on that, but I think I'd lean towards scenario 2. And I really think the cemetery should basically pay back all of the capital costs and land. But I think at some point a future council will have to decide whether the general fund is going to help with maintenance long term. And I don't think you cut that out of there, right? And this, as I understand.
I'm not opposed to scenario 2 at all. I don't want you to think that I am. I just think we need to raise our rates on that. I think we're really low, and in a lot low. And then that, if we have it the same amount for resident, non-resident, we have, we escape that problem of what, Stephanie was just talking about. But I understand what you're saying, Dr. Smith, about the interest, but I just don't think this should be a money-making scenario for people.
Well,
and that's kind of what happens. I'm bendable on that. I'm not saying, I'm absolutely
But what you're
stuck
getting
in the
back
mud
is
on
just
that.
the
What?
change in inflation.
Yeah.
But
So it's not really money making, it's just taking into account inflation. So really, if you had actually held on to that money yourself, you would have made money off it as well. So it kind of is sixes on that.
I would be curious to see what American Fork is doing right now on selling it back, because when I sold mine back, they were going for $1,400, and they gave me $700.
Well, and then the city is able to sell it back for that higher rate too. I would be interested, just making sure everybody had a chance to give their thoughts. Councilwoman Rodella, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I lean towards scenario 2 as well.
Okay. Dr. Smith?
Well, I was leaning towards scenario 2.
Okay.
So I think that's at least 3 of us.
Yeah. Councilmember Courtney?
I would prefer to eliminate the 10% operating cost subsidy from the city going forward, and to aim for somewhat more than $26.2 million to give ourselves a buffer, because that sets it for exactly what we think we're going to be spending going forward. But of these options, I would go with option 2.
Okay. And Councilmember Campbell, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Just on the idea of when they're sold back, I would prefer they be sold back at the going rate. Otherwise, I believe your study was based on that, and we'd probably have to go back and tweak these numbers if we change that on you. And that is the status quo right now. I wouldn't want to change the status quo.
Councilmember Rice, do you have any closing last thoughts?
I think I'm going to have to think about this.
I think it's fair for everybody to think about it.
I just, it's not that it's just, I know what I've been through, and I know what other people go through when this happens, and I guess to some people that would seem unfair, but I think it's unfair that they would, never mind, double their money. And I just really worry about what's happening down the road. Our maintenance costs are going to go up. Everything's going to go up. So, I mean, well, I got to think about this.
If I bought a home in 1975 for $35,000, I would not want to sell it for $35,000.
That's fair.
So it sounds like, Aaron, is that enough direction for you? It sounds like you have 3.5 council members leaning for scenario 2, but you have some concerns that.
I like the half. That's fun. Yes. So I think what we'll do, if I understand correctly, we'll explore scenario 2 a little bit more, look into the option of the sell back, right? Current rate versus past rate. I remember that being a big conversation 10 years ago, and it must have happened right after you did that sell back, Councilmember Rice. So we'll research that a little bit. And then I think, do you want us to bring back almost like 2 scenarios, like scenario 2 status quo versus scenario 2 if we eliminate the general fund subsidy, to Councilmember Courtney's point? Just because I know that we're throwing a lot at you right now, and I don't think it's fair to expect you to make a decision. This is what we definitely want to do at this moment.
I would agree with that, Aaron.
Okay.
I think, yeah, and I think that answers Doug's question.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think get us the information so that we can study it and really think about it. Because like they said, it's a lot to think about.
No, absolutely. So we will do that.
Perfect.
Mayor.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to take the liberty and say one extra thing. So I don't know if anybody has had the privilege of watching Stephanie interact with people who come into her office, but there is, and I'm not going to cry about it, but I actually could. There is no place that anybody would be treated with more grace and kindness and understanding. And I think it's an underappreciated job that she does. And I really do believe that it's one of the most important things we do. And I just think we are so lucky to have somebody who is so kind to everybody who comes in. So thank you.
And compassionate.
Yep. And we're just very, very lucky.
My office is next to Stephanie's, and I 100% agree.
I've seen people come in and out, and just for anybody who has to be in that scenario, they are lucky that you're the one they get to work with. So thank you. Anyway, enough of that before I cry. Happy birthday, Ron, to your twin.
I'll tell him that you all wished him a happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we have a very, very short closed session. So we do need a motion to adjourn to closed session for whatever reason, Stephanie.
I move that we close, we.
Wait, we need
we need the actual text.
There's a very
This is
specific
one we have to be
motion.
very
You have to be
careful
real
about.
specific.
And then we're going to do a roll call voice vote on this one.
I move that we move.
But we have to.
We
do
have
it.
to,
You're waiting.
Yeah.
yep, we have to have her very
No, it has
specific
to be that
text.
exact wording.
Oh, okay.
We're doing roll call?
Go ahead and make your motion.
I move that city recess to the regular city council meeting to convene in a closed meeting in the executive conference room to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
I'll second it.
Perfect. Let's have a roll call, starting with Councilmember Rodella.
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Yes.
And Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
And Councilmember Rice?
Yes.
So we're now in closed session.
You threw me off. You went the other way.